Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Johnia Berry. Johnia Berry was born on August 26, 1983 in the small town of Bristol, Tennessee, USA. She is cheerful, friendly, has many friends, and often goes to parties. While in school, Johnia was a member of the local cheerleading squad. After graduating from high school, she studied psychology and criminology at East Tennessee State University. While in college, she met Jason White, they became a couple, and they got engaged before graduating in late 2004. When Johnia was 21, she decided to continue her studies to get a master's degree in psychology, so she temporarily moved to Knoxville. While studying, she worked part-time at a child education center and realized her passion for helping children. Her boyfriend, Jason, studied law in another state. Despite the distance, they kept in touch and planned their wedding. While in Knoxville, Johnia stayed at a classmate Jason Amami's apartment. They had attended college together and moved to Knoxville together. They shared a two-bedroom apartment, and Johnia stayed until she found her own place. Johnia had two part-time jobs, one at a jewelry store and one at a children's hospital. On the evening of Sunday, December 5th, after working at the store, Johnia went to the mall to do some Christmas shopping. When she got home, she wrapped presents for the children at the daycare center, chatted with her neighbors, and then went to her room. Before going to sleep, she talked to her boyfriend. Around 4 a.m., Jason Amami heard Johnia screaming. He thought Johnia was having a nightmare, so he went into her room, but instead of Johnia, Jason Amami saw a stranger holding a knife. The stranger attacked Jason Amami, and they struggled. He eventually pushed the attacker away and ran out of the apartment. He went to the nearest convenience store, about a mile away, to call for help. The store clerk found him covered in blood and called 911. The police arrived at Jason Amami and Johnia's apartment and found Johnia in the hallway connecting 5 apartments. She was still alive but barely conscious. When asked about her attacker, she gave only vague clues. The police searched the entire building and the surrounding area but could not find the attacker. They took Johnia to the nearest hospital, but despite the doctor's best efforts, she died. The doctor said that Johnia had suffered more than 20 stab wounds and that her chances of survival were slim. Meanwhile, Jason Amami had suffered 8 injuries from the attacker, but only one was serious. He was treated and his life was not in danger. At the same time, detectives began investigating the scene. They found blood in the hallway, indicating that Johnia had tried to call for help from neighbors, but no one answered the door. Near Johnia's room, they found the murder weapon, a kitchen knife owned by Jason Amami. The attacker used the knife with such force that it was bent and damaged. Police also found blood stains near the back door and on the stairs leading to the street. Since Jason Amami and Johnia had left through the front door, detectives believe the killer escaped through the back door. In Jason Amami's room, they found another clue, partial footprints that the attacker may have left while stalking and attacking Jason Amami. Because of the brutality of Johnia's death, police suspected a personal motive behind the crime. Initially, detectives investigated Johnia's boyfriend, even though he lived about 1,000 miles away in Knoxville. However, all of his friends and family said that Johnia and her boyfriend had a wonderful relationship and that he had no reason to commit such a brutal act. He learned of Johnia's death when her mother called at 10 a.m. to tell him. He said he fainted when he heard the news and it took him a long time to regain consciousness. Unable to do anything, he asked his neighbors to help him book a plane ticket and prepare his luggage. Investigators looked closely at Jason White's alibi and realized that he could not have made it to Knoxville and back in the morning by himself. So they eliminated him as a suspect and turned their attention to Johnia's neighbor. This neighbor did not have a solid alibi and had been in the apartment with Johnia, raising suspicions that he could be the culprit. Johnia's friends and family also suspected this neighbor. Some believed that he could be the killer, while others accused him of fleeing the apartment, leaving Johnia behind. The suspicions were so deep that the victim's parents did not even want him to attend her funeral. However, after Jason Amami was discharged from the hospital, investigators began questioning him. He stuck to his original story. He heard screaming, saw a strange man, and was attacked by him. After fighting off the attacker, Jason Amami ran to the front door and onto the street, seeking help from neighbors. He believed that Johnia had also escaped from the apartment because he could not hear her screams. However, police had doubts about Jason Amami's story. What initially raised suspicions about Jason Amami were his injuries. 7 of the 8 were superficial, and the last wound to his right arm could have been self-defense or the result of an attack. Additionally, investigators found no signs of forced entry into the apartment, suggesting that the perpetrator may have been someone Johnia knew. Jason Amami claimed that he had taken out the trash through the back door that night but did not remember locking it. Detectives continued to press him, paying close attention to the door he used to exit the apartment onto the street. Jason Amami insisted that he had exited through the front door, but police suspected that he might be lying. If Jason Amami had indeed left through the front door, that would not have explained the presence of bloodstains near the back door, further raising suspicions against him. Police accused Jason Amami of using and selling illegal drugs, and of being aggressive when he could not satisfy his addiction. However, he denied all of these allegations. After hours of questioning at the police station, detectives suggested that Jason Amami take a polygraph test. Jason Amami agreed to take the test. The results showed that he gave false answers, which made detectives even more suspicious of him. However, detectives were still unable to charge him with murder due to a lack of concrete evidence. They had to wait for lab experts to complete testing on some of the evidence found in the apartment. They then discovered some key evidence, including 3 DNA samples on the murder knife, samples from Johnia, Jason Amami, and an unidentified man. The unidentified man's DNA was also found in Johnia's room, on the back door handle, and on the stairs the criminal used to escape to the street. They also found a fingerprint on the handle of the knife, but it did not match Jason Amami's fingerprint. These discoveries led the police to suspect that someone else had been in the apartment that night. However, when they ran the DNA sample against existing databases, they found no match. This complicated the case further, and detectives had to continue investigating to find the real killer. Investigators have ruled out Jason Amami as a suspect, but the public remains uncertain about his role in the incident. They believe that Jason Amami abandoned his friend and ran away instead of protecting her. However, it is worth noting that after the accident, Jason Amami began to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. A key finding was later revealed: the polygraph operator had misinterpreted the test results, and there was no indication that Jason Amami was lying. Additionally, there was no concrete evidence that Jason Amami was involved with illegal substances. They eventually concluded that this was used as leverage to frame him. More importantly, however, doctors initially underestimated the severity of Jason Amami's injuries. In fact, he had suffered severe damage to his lungs and neck, with little hope of a full recovery. Due to inaccurate information reported about Jason Amami's health, the insurance company only covered 25% of his medical expenses, leaving Jason Amami facing serious financial hardship. After eliminating Jason as a suspect, police began questioning him as a witness. Based on Jason's testimony, they attempted to create a rough description of the attacker. However, this was made more difficult by the fact that Jason could not see the attacker's face clearly. The apartment was too dark and the attacker lunged at him as soon as he entered the room. Investigators also discovered several suspicious items in the room, including a hat, a record player, and a stereo near the back stairs. At first, they thought these items might belong to Johnia or Jason, but Jason denied owning them. This led them to suspect that these items might have been left behind by the killer. Police shared a rough sketch of the suspect with the media, and they subsequently received hundreds of calls from the public. Many people reported individuals who matched the sketch, prompting detectives to pursue each of these leads. One of the prominent clues led investigators to a group of teenagers who had broken into homes with the intention of burglarizing. One member of the group, a 19-year-old named Michael, matched the sketch of the suspect. The police began searching for Michael, but this was not easy because he was wanted for burglary. 2 police units joined the search for him, and they eventually found Michael. When interrogating Michael, investigators immediately noticed his shoes, which had a pattern similar to the footprints left by the killer. They collected Michael's DNA and fingerprints and sent them to experts for analysis. During the interrogation, Michael revealed a surprising piece of information. He and a friend had entered Johnia's apartment that night. According to Michael, they planned to rob, but his friend attacked Johnia with a knife. However, detectives soon discovered inconsistencies in Michael's story. The details he provided did not match the actual events, and there was no evidence of 2 strangers at the crime scene. Michael's DNA and fingerprints also did not match the evidence at the scene. Michael's shoes also did not match the tread pattern in Jason's room. Investigators concluded that Michael had made up the story. This is not uncommon, as some people may falsely confess to crimes in order to seek attention or reward. Michael's motives remained unclear, but his story was completely untrue. Police subsequently interviewed more than 1,000 potential suspects and collected about 400 DNA samples, but none of them matched the evidence at the scene. Early in the murder investigation, authorities offered a reward for information leading to a solution to the case. The reward grew each month, and by December 2005, it had reached $60,000. The governor then added another $20,000 to bring the case to the attention of the public. Despite many clues, all were dead ends, and the case remained unsolved for many years. In 2007, Johnia's parents decided to take matters into their own hands by looking into changes in state law. They noticed that the killer's fingerprints and DNA did not appear in any databases, which raised suspicions about his brutality. They assumed that the killer had a criminal record, so they investigated Tennessee law. Through their investigation, they discovered that, according to Tennessee law, fingerprints and DNA samples could only be collected from convicted criminals. So Johnia's parents expressed their desire to change this law. They played a key role in drafting a new law that required fingerprints and DNA samples to be collected from all people arrested for violent crimes. After gaining support from the government, the law was passed in May 2007. 2 months later, a breakthrough occurred. Police arrested 22-year-old Taylor Lee Olson for violating the terms of his probation. Olson had a criminal record, including theft, check forgery, and auto theft, and had been arrested several times. Surprisingly, however, police had never collected his fingerprints or DNA. Olson lived with his girlfriend and newborn daughter, but he continued to commit crimes. 5 months earlier, police had begun investigating Olson for his suspected involvement in the murder of Johnia. However, they had not been able to analyze his DNA at the time. But after Olson was arrested for violating his probation, police decided to question him about the details of the Johnia case. Olson eventually confessed to his role in the murder and voluntarily provided a DNA sample. The DNA test showed that Olson's sample matched the one found in the victim's apartment. Additionally, Olson's fingerprints matched the fingerprints on the murder weapon. Olson claimed that he intended to steal Johnia's car that night and entered the apartment through the back door to look for the keys. When he entered Johnia's room, she woke up and began screaming. In a panic, Olson grabbed a kitchen knife and attacked her multiple times. Olson insisted that he had no intention of killing anyone and that the incident was an unfortunate accident. Investigators were suspicious of some of the details and suspected that Taylor had planned to kill Johnia in advance. They believed that he may have been following Johnia for some time, which was supported by Johnia's friends reporting that someone was following her in a car at the time. Although there was no concrete evidence to prove this, this became more credible after Olson was arrested. When Olson's trial was scheduled to begin in mid-2008, he hired an attorney. His attorney advised him to withdraw his original confession, and Olson gave a new account to investigators. According to this new account, Olson claimed that he had entered Johnia's apartment with his friend, Noah Cox. When Olson entered Johnia's room to get his car keys, Johnia allegedly woke up, grabbed a knife, and stabbed Olson multiple times. Olson then fled through the back door while his friend entered Johnia's room, disarmed Johnia, and killed her. Taylor Olson's new story raised suspicions among police. They found no fingerprints or DNA of others at the crime scene, leading them to believe that no one else was involved. Detectives waited for the trial to begin, but it never did. On March 28, 2008, Taylor Olson committed suicide in his jail cell. Along with him, detectives found several suicide notes addressed to his family, Johnia's relatives, and the police. In the letter to detectives, he accused his friend Noah Cox of being the real culprit and apologized to Johnia's family and his family. However, detectives still believed that Olson was responsible for the murders. They questioned Noah several times but found no evidence implicating him. Johnia's parents were also skeptical of Olson's final confession. They felt that if Olson was truly innocent, he would not have committed suicide. Olson had consistently maintained that he had entered the apartment alone for months after his initial confession. His sudden change in story to blame his friend raised further suspicions. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Nicole Peets. Nicole Peets was born on February 26, 1973 in King County, Washington. Nicole was the only child in her family and her parents divorced when she was in school. During her high school years, Nicole was an active, sociable, athletic girl who was well-liked by many people. She had many friends and enjoyed field trips to the countryside. After graduating from high school, Nicole studied public relations at Western Washington College. At the same time, Nicole was still actively involved in sports. Nicole took a coaching position at a local sports club. Nicole quickly gained the respect of her colleagues, and Nicole attracted many customers to her classes. After graduating from college, Nicole decided to continue her education to improve her management skills. She found a job at a large mobile communications company. Nicole's personality is friendly, sociable, and willing to help people, but few people know that inside she is suffering from a lot of pain and suffering. Nicole's teenage years were severely affected by alcoholism. The divorce of her parents was a huge shock to her fragile psyche. Her rebellious nature and bad friends influenced her, and she began drinking. All of this led to a serious alcoholism that lasted for many years and completely undermined Nicole's physical and mental health. At that time, Nicole's mother, Gail, worked as a flight attendant and was often away from home because of her busy work. Therefore, Gail did not realize the change in Nicole. Nicole lives with her elderly grandmother, who also did not realize that her granddaughter regularly drank alcohol. When the truth was revealed, alcoholism had caused severe damage to Nicole. To help Nicole, Gail, her mother, accompanied Nicole to support her. Gail accompanied Nicole to therapy and alcoholism meetings, helping Nicole open up and overcome her cravings. At that time, Nicole's mother Gail had remarried, and Gail's new husband, Robert, was supportive of his stepdaughter, loving Nicole like his own daughter and believing that Nicole could overcome her alcoholism. Nicole took treatment very seriously. She did not miss a single meeting and quickly overcame her addiction. However, alcohol caused many health problems for Nicole. She had serious problems with her pancreas that required surgery. In addition, her alcoholism at a young age had seriously affected her fertility, making it impossible for Nicole to have children. In the mid-1990s, when Nicole was recovering from her addiction and living sober again, Nicole met David. At the time, Nicole had just gotten a job at a sports club, and David was a regular at the club. David was a tall, handsome young man. David was immediately attracted to Nicole, an attractive trainer, and David began to show interest in her. David, who was 4 years younger than Nicole, soon developed a relationship that lasted almost 8 years, and it was not until 2002 that the couple decided to marry. David and Nicole had a simple wedding in Hawaii, inviting only their closest friends. After their marriage, the newlyweds bought their own house and began to settle down in the town of Linwood, Washington. Nicole was a friendly and outgoing young woman who quickly made friends and built good relationships with her neighbors. Nicole loved animals and had several dogs. Because she could not have children, Nicole devoted all her love to these pets. David and Nicole were a perfect couple. They often went for walks with their dogs and always had happy smiles on their faces. Nicole loved to cook, and she was a very good cook. Nicole often treated her husband to delicious meals cooked by herself. In 2006, just a few days before her 33rd birthday, Nicole mysteriously disappeared. That day, for the first time, she did not attend an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, where she was the leader and inspiration for the group. Nicole also did not come to work, making her colleagues even more worried. In the evening, her mother, Gail, felt very worried when she could not contact Nicole all day, which had never happened before. Gail called Nicole's husband, David, to find out what was going on. However, David could not contact Nicole either. David said that David and Nicole had argued a little the day before, so when he tried calling Nicole the next day and got no response, he thought that Nicole was still angry with him. David did not rush to find Nicole right away, but waited until the evening to ask for her forgiveness. However, Nicole still did not come home that night. Nicole's family tried to contact her by phone but received no response. They decided to go to the police to report the incident. However, the police did not immediately accept their report because Nicole was an adult and had only been missing for less than a day. It was not until the evening of the second day after Nicole went missing that the police began searching. When Nicole did not appear and her phone was unreachable, the police decided to start searching from where she was last seen, which was her and David's house. However, after investigating, the police did not find any clues or unusual signs that Nicole had been kidnapped or that something had happened to her in that house. And Nicole's car was also missing with her, suggesting that she may have left on her own and did not want to return. Her mother Gail and stepfather Robert did not wait for the police to wait the required time and began the search themselves. They appealed to all concerned through social media to help in the search and share any relevant information about Nicole's location. Nicole's father and mother also took the first flight to Linwood, where they began searching for Nicole themselves, handing out flyers with her photo and asking people who knew her. The police searched for Nicole and her car. They tried to determine the route the car had taken on the day Nicole went missing. But there were no clues. The next morning a man was jogging when he took a shortcut through an area that was very sparsely populated. As he passed through that area, he noticed something strange in the bushes. As he got closer, he realized it was the severely mutilated body of a naked woman. He immediately called the police and reported the incident. The police quickly arrived at the scene. At the scene was the body of a young woman without any clothes on. Based on the number of bruises and scratches, the victim had been brutally beaten. The cause of death was asphyxiation due to strangulation with bare hands. The police suspected that the body was Nicole Peets, who had been missing for several days. When Nicole's mother, Gail, went to the morgue to identify the body, Gail fainted when she saw the body, and her husband, Robert, was also very sad. As for Nicole's husband, David, he did not show any signs of grief. This made everyone around David feel a little suspicious of his reaction. The police continued to search for Nicole's car, hoping to find traces of the killer in the car. Information about the missing car was widely publicized in the media, along with a call for people to contact the police if they saw the car. Some time later, a gray Volkswagen Polo was found in a parking lot on the outskirts of town. The security guard there discovered the car when he realized that it had been left there for a long time. At the time, he did not know that the car was involved in this serious murder. The police took the car for inspection and examined it to look for evidence and clues to help track down the criminal. However, after the inspection, they found no traces, except for the fingerprints and DNA traces of Nicole and her husband David. Without finding any concrete evidence, the police returned the car to David. The truth is that Nicole was brutally murdered, but the motive for the crime remains unclear. In addition, the carjacking theory is unlikely, as the car was abandoned shortly after on the other side of town. Nicole Peets' case remains unsolved after nearly a year of investigation. There have been no new leads or leads in the search for the perpetrator. No one saw the suspect leave his car in the parking lot because it was not crowded and there were no surveillance cameras in the area. What is suspicious is that Nicole's case has been kept secret. Information about the investigation and new evidence has not been disclosed to the family. Nicole's relatives have not been fully updated, only receiving small details. Nicole's bank card was used at a gas station after she went missing. Although the police have collected images from the cameras, they have not yet disclosed the results of the investigation. When Nicole's case did not progress and the perpetrator was still at large, Nicole's parents decided to conduct an investigation themselves. They hired a private investigator to gather information, verify some suspicions, and offer a reward for anyone who could provide useful information. The reward was initially $10,000 and later increased to $35,000, but no new leads were found. David initially showed great interest in investigating Nicole's disappearance for the first 6 months. However, after that time, he began to distance himself and had little contact with his in-laws, and David eventually remarried and had children of his own. The news of David's remarriage and children of his own came as a huge shock to Nicole's mother, Gail, because Nicole was unable to have children and was often blamed by David. A grief-stricken Gail repeatedly hinted that the culprit might be her son-in-law. 6 years later, Nicole's case took an unexpected turn. David was arrested as the prime suspect in the case. David did not expect that he himself would be the focus of this investigation. Previously, David had changed his residence and lost contact with Nicole's family, so he thought that the case was over and no one was looking for him. However, David was very surprised when the police raided and arrested him. At that time, David even declared his innocence and was willing to take a lie detector test, but he failed the test. As for the police, they suspected David from the beginning, but lacked concrete evidence. In order to arrest David, the police gathered a lot of evidence to ensure that he was responsible for the crime. In fact, David himself probably thought that he had committed the crime perfectly and would never be discovered. A video from the gas station provided an important clue. Footage of the moment a man paid with Nicole's card showed that the man looked similar to David. Although the man was wearing a hat and sunglasses, making identification more difficult, the footage was a key clue in the case. Police also discovered that Nicole was not wearing her wedding ring. Nicole never left the house without it. Initially, police thought the ring had been stolen with other items, but the box containing the ring was later found on a dressing table in Nicole's home. Police discovered a mouth guard in Nicole's mouth during the autopsy. This was a device Nicole had been prescribed shortly before the tragedy, as she suffered from uncontrollable spasms of her chewing muscles due to anxiety, which led to worn enamel and chipped teeth. The presence of this device suggested that Nicole may have been murdered while she was still asleep in her bed. It is possible that David had forgotten that his wife was using a mouth guard because she had only recently started using it. In addition, the police examined the traces left in Nicole's car. Only David's and Nicole's fingerprints were found in the car. No traces of anyone else were found, suggesting that there was no third person involved in the murder. The investigation also shed light on Nicole and David's family situation at the time. David did not hold any permanent jobs and preferred to spend his time in bars and clubs, where David spent all of Nicole's earnings on alcohol and other women. The family was facing serious financial problems, and the situation became worse over time. Nicole tried to convince David to change his lifestyle and attend alcohol rehabilitation meetings to help David get back on track. However, David's response was indifferent and insulting. David had affairs with many women. Nicole's mother Gail knew about the serious problems in Nicole's family and tried to convince Nicole to leave David. However, Nicole did not want to do so because she loved David and hoped he would change. After Nicole's death, her husband David quickly received a large insurance payout and started a new relationship. Before that, David had been having an affair with a girl named Jane for several months. David often spent time with her at bars and clubs when Nicole was busy working or studying. Before Nicole's birthday, David brought his mistress home, where they were caught by Nicole. This incident became the cause of an argument in the family. Nicole told her mother about the incident, and a few days later, she mysteriously disappeared. Because Gail knew everything, she suspected David from the beginning. However, the police said that the evidence collected was too little to arrest the suspect. The case was kept secret and the family was never heard from again. When David received a large insurance payout after Nicole's death, he spent the money with his mistress, Jane. David appeared in court in September 2013 for his crimes. David received the maximum sentence possible under the laws of the state where the case was tried. David served 18 years in prison. However, in 2025, he could be eligible for parole after serving 2/3 of his sentence. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of the Harvey family. Brian Taba Harvey, 49, was a local icon who rose to fame in the 1980s as the lead singer and songwriter of the indie band House of Freaks. Although he and his musical partner Johnny Hott went their separate ways professionally in the 1990s, they remained close friends. A dedicated musician, Brian performed on stage for the final time on New Year's Eve, unaware that it would be the last night of his life. On the other hand, Catherine Gravinsky, 39, found success as co-owner of World of Mirth, a popular toy store in Richmond's Carytown district. She was an artist who pursued various endeavors, including painting sets for community theater, working as a pastry chef, and waitressing. Catherine had an older sister, Shelley Gravinsky, and was also the half-sister of actor Stephen Culp, known for his roles in TV shows such as The West Wing and Desperate Housewives, as well as various films. Brian and Catherine's paths crossed at the Border Cafe on Main Street, where Catherine worked and Brian frequently visited with Johnny. In 1990, Brian and Catherine got married. The House of Freaks then released an album featuring a song called I Got Happy, which was dedicated to Catherine. The couple had 2 daughters. Their first daughter, Stella, was born in 1996. After becoming a father, Brian realized that having children helped him find meaning in life and the importance of keeping hope for his children's future. Their second daughter, Ruby, was born in 2001. While working in the computer department of the Henrico County school system, Brian continued to pursue his passion for music. Meanwhile, Catherine started her own business, opening a unique toy and gift store called World of Mirth in the Carytown neighborhood. The store was designed to be a welcoming space for parents and children to spend time together, and children are free to play with the available toys. Brian Harvey's family lives in a quiet, quaint neighborhood south of Richmond. Their two-story red brick house was surrounded by large trees, porch swings, and ivy-covered gardens. They had a cozy family room in the basement. The family was well respected and loved in the community, and it seemed no one had any ill will towards them. On New Year's Day, 2006, Brian, his wife Catherine, and their two daughters, Stella and Ruby, were preparing for a busy day. They were hosting a barbecue lunch for friends and family, a tradition they enjoyed every year on this day. They woke up early to get everything ready. That Sunday morning, Brian went outside to collect the newspaper, absorbed in the front-page news. He didn't lock the door when he came back in, which wasn't unusual for them, especially on party days when friends would be arriving. The neighborhood was considered safe, so they didn't think much of it. However, on that day, Brian was unaware that some criminals were secretly lurking nearby. Catherine was busy in the kitchen, preparing cookies for the guests who were expected to arrive soon. Suddenly, she heard voices coming from the living room and thought that some guests had arrived early. But when she went to check, she was shocked to see two strangers instead of familiar faces. Later, Brian, Catherine, and their young daughter Ruby were ordered to go downstairs to the basement playroom. Stella, who had spent the night at a friend's house, had not yet arrived home. Once the family was in the small room, the intruders used electrical cords and packing tape to tie them up. The intruders told them that as long as they cooperated, no one would get hurt while they searched the house. Just as the intruders were starting to ransack the house, someone knocked on the front door at around 10 a.m. The leader of the intruders untied Catherine and told her to answer the door. However, he warned her that if she tried to escape or ask for help, her daughter and husband would be killed. Catherine was in a difficult situation. Stella was about to arrive, and if she answered the door, she would put her daughter in danger. On the other hand, if she didn't answer the door, the intruder might get angry and hurt her family. In the end, Catherine decided that it was best to cooperate, so she opened the door. Stella suddenly ran past Catherine and into the playroom, where the family usually spent a lot of time together. Catherine quickly intervened, stopping Stella's friend from following her. Kyron Perkinson, the friend's mother, later expressed her surprise at Catherine's unusual behavior. When Perkinson asked Catherine how she was feeling, Catherine said she was not well. Then, she made a circular motion with her hand, mimicking a gun and pointing it at her head. This abruptly ended the conversation, and Catherine shut the door. This strange gesture would later trouble Perkinson, wondered if Catherine was trying to convey something. She wondered if Catherine being monitored by the intruders. Perkinson left, intending to return later for a party. All four members of the Harvey family were now inside the house. Catherine went back to the basement and found Stella had been securely tied up alongside the rest of the family. Everyone was caught helpless and defenseless. Chaos broke out unexpectedly and without any prior indication. The assailant revealed a knife taken from the Harvey's kitchen and began slashing the family members' throats. Angry that he had to wait so long for them to die, he ordered his accomplices to hit them hard on the head. However, the accomplice refused. The assailant then grabbed a claw hammer and ruthlessly struck the family members repeatedly until they stopped moving. After removing Catherine Harvey's wedding ring, the assailants set the room on fire using wine as an accelerant to conceal evidence of their crimes. As they escaped from the scene, they ate a plate of freshly baked cookies from the kitchen counter and stole a laptop, DVD player, and other items. They rushed out and entered the getaway vehicle parked outside, where a woman was waiting. She was related to one of the robbers and had been on lookout duty during the incident. They quickly departed, leaving the scene as quietly as they had arrived. Later that day, around 1:30 p.m., Johnny arrived at the celebratory gathering. Upon opening the front door, he was met with a thick cloud of smoke and a strong burning smell. Alarmed, he alerted the neighbors. They quickly called 911. Firefighters arrived at the scene and put out the fire. However, they soon discovered 4 bodies in the smoldering basement. Despite initial appearances, investigators determined that the fire did not cause the deaths. Instead, they found evidence of a more sinister cause. The investigation was now treating the incident as a murder case. The scene was so heartbreaking that it left even the police and medical staff, who were accustomed to dealing with traumatic situations, utterly stunned and shocked. Some were even seen crying openly. The discovery that parents were made to watch their children being brutally killed, and that children were also forced to witness the brutal deaths of their parents, was especially devastating. Autopsies revealed that Brian and Catherine died from blunt force trauma to the head. Stella's death was caused by a combination of blunt force trauma and smoke inhalation, suggesting she was still alive when the fire started. Ruby's cause of death was stab wounds to the neck and back, resulting in her death. The authorities immediately launched an investigation into the murders, but they had little evidence to work with. To gather more information, they appealed to the public for assistance. This approach proved successful when, on January 6, a woman named Latoya P.Y. contacted the police, requesting a welfare check on her friend, 21 years old Ashley Basil Tucker. Latoya expressed concerns that Ashley's boyfriend, 29 years old Ree Joseph Dandridge, and his uncle, 29 years old Ricky Javon Gray, were involved in the Harvey family's murder. Gray, who was slightly younger than his nephew by a few months, was reportedly the one in charge. The investigation took a significant turn when Latoya revealed that the 2 men had hidden evidence of their crimes at her residence. She disclosed that Gray and Dandridge had recently visited her home with a laptop that had an image of the Harvey family as its wallpaper. Given the extensive news coverage of the Harvey case, it was clear that the laptop belonged to the family. Latoya revealed information about the plan that Ashley, Gray and Dandridge had devised to rob Ashley's parents. According to the plan, Ashley would pretend to be a hostage, allowing Dandridge and Gray to extort money from the Purcell Tucker, Ashley's stepfather. This would make Ashley appear innocent, even though Latoya knew about the plan and was offered a role in it. However, Latoya became suspicious of the group and declined to participate. Later, when Latoya asked Gray and Dandridge about Ashley's whereabouts, they gave a cryptic response, saying, "Ashley has gone bye-bye." This increased Latoya's concerns, and she contacted the police. The information she provided was crucial in helping investigators connect the dots. When investigators arrived at the residence where Ashley lived with her mother, Mary Baskerville Tucker, and stepfather, Purcell Tucker, they found a gruesome scene. Inside the home, they discovered the lifeless bodies of all 3 victims, who had been subjected to a brutal and violent death, similar to the Harvey family. The victims were bound, gagged, and had their throats slit. Duct tape was wrapped tightly around their heads, causing additional suffering. Mary and Purcell had deep neck lacerations, and Purcell had a sock inserted into his throat. Ashley was found to have been suffocated with a plastic bag. The cause of death for all 3 victims was determined to be suffocation and torture. The police believed that the killer's primary motivation was a thrill-seeking desire, rather than any obvious personal benefit, so they worked together to catch them before they could hurt anyone else. Similar to the Harveys, Purcell and Mary live a quiet life with no known enemies. Percy works as a forklift driver, while Mary works for a cleaning service company. Their peaceful life was shattered by their daughter's betrayal. leading to the tragic death of a couple enjoying their golden years. Investigators quickly discovered a crucial connection between the Harvey family's case and the Tucker family's case. Ashley was found wearing Catherine's wedding band, which had been missing and taken from Catherine. With this revelation, urgent action was necessary to apprehend Gray and Dandridge before they could inflict further harm. Authorities tracked Gray and Dandridge back to their home state of Pennsylvania and apprehended them in Philadelphia on January 7. Dandridge claimed that Gray planned the murders and he just followed orders. When faced with these accusations, Gray provided explicit and disturbing details of the two family massacres, explaining that financial gain was the primary motivation behind their actions. Notably, during the Harvey family murders, he was under the influence of an illicit substance called PCP, also known as phencyclidine or angel dust. This potent drug is known to cause auditory and visual hallucinations and often leads to aggressive behavior. During his confession, Gray showed no emotion, maintaining a chilling stare. His indifference to the lives he took led investigators to view him as a ruthless and heartless individual. Additionally, it was discovered that Gray was responsible for the murder of his wife, Trevor Terrell Gray, whose body was found in a shallow grave in Washington, Pennsylvania. The couple, married for 6 months, lived together in a house owned by Trevor's family. They shared the home with Gray's nephew, Dandridge. Trevor's parents reported that the couple frequently had intense arguments. On the day Trevor's body was discovered, Gray had claw marks on his forearm. Initially, neither Gray nor Dandridge were considered suspects by the Washington police. Trevor's mother, Manna Squires, claimed that the police thought Trevor's death was due to a drug overdose, which led to a slow investigation. Trevor's death initially raised suspicions, but a thorough investigation did not occur until Gray confessed to the crime in 2006. On December 31, 2005, a violent assault occurred outside a home in Arlington. Two men, later identified as Gray and Dandridge, attacked 26-year-old Ryan Key in front of his parents' house. The assault left Ryan with severe injuries, including stab wounds to the chest, neck, and arms. He spent 2 weeks in a coma due to the near-fatal attack. Additionally, he permanently lost the use of his right arm. Gray and Dandridge faced multiple charges related of the Tucker's family killings. Gray was charged with 5 counts of capital murder, while Dandridge faced 3 counts of murder. Despite initially admitting to their involvement, both men pleaded not guilty. Gray's 6-month trial concluded with a guilty verdict on all counts. He received a life sentence for the murders of Brian and Catherine Harvey. The court also sentenced him to death for the brutal murders of Stella and Ruby. Following Gray's conviction in September 2006, Dandridge chose to accept a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in December 2006. Gray also faced charges in Culpeper County for the murder of Cheryl Warner, a 37-year-old mother of 3 who was found shot and hanged in her burning home. Gray pleaded not guilty, but the charge was later suspended due to conflicting evidence on June 4, 2008. Over the next 9 years, Gray's lawyers filed multiple appeals. They argued that Gray's traumatic childhood had affected his mental capacity. However, the Supreme Court rejected his case in 2016. As a result, Gray was scheduled to be executed on January 18, 2017. On the scheduled date, with all appeals exhausted, Gray was put to death by lethal injection at Greensville Correctional Center. Meanwhile, Dandridge remains in prison at Sussex 2 State Prison. The Harvey family's brutal murders sent shockwaves of horror and grief through the community. Over 1,400 people attended their memorial service, expressing condolences and sorrow outside Catherine's store. Flowers, dolls, and candles formed a poignant tribute along the curb outside the red brick house. The candles, lit by children, remained glowing for weeks. Catherine's brother Culp described the murders as a devastating blow that felt endless. He spoke about the pain of thinking about the family's final hours, saying that everyone was trying to move forward. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lauren Stewart. Lauren Stewart was born on January 9, 1973. She has spent most of her life in Michigan. Lauren pursued her passions as a model and actress, attending workshops and interacting with photographers to further her career. Those who know her describe her as charming and easygoing. Lauren is passionate about her acting and modeling work. She enjoys new experiences, learning from others and sharing ideas, seeing life as an adventure and striving to live life to the fullest. Lauren is married to Daniel Stewart, a senior software architect at the University of Michigan, where he works predicting heart attacks. Prior to his current role, Daniel spent several years in the tech industry as a Coda developer. Lauren and Daniel were devout Christians in the Jehovah's Witnesses sect for a long time until 2013, when they decided to leave Christianity. Lauren and Daniel have 2 children, Stephen Stewart, 27, a data solutions architect and computer scientist, and Bethany Stewart, 24, a talented artist and graphic designer. At 45, Lauren seems to have the perfect life, a loving husband, well-educated children, a thriving modeling career, and a beautiful home in Keio Harbor. But deep inside, Lauren struggled with the emotional pain of being shunned and rejected by the Jehovah's Witness community she grew up in. The strict rules and practices of shunning former members took their toll on her. Lauren and Daniel's decision to leave the faith was a difficult one. The Laurens remained devout Jehovah's Witnesses until 2013, but the church's strict rules posed problems for their children's futures. Celebrating holidays was forbidden and higher education was prohibited, with the threat of expulsion for non-compliance. When Daniel asked for his children to attend university, he was warned that defying church policy would result in expulsion, which was distressing for the family as it meant complete social isolation, even from relatives. Lauren's family made the decision to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses after careful consideration. While the decision initially seemed right, they soon faced strong opposition from their community, which became unbearable, especially for Lauren. She found that even simple tasks like going shopping became difficult due to hostile looks and hurtful comments from former friends. Although these comments were not directed at her, they were said loudly enough for her to hear. Living in a small community of 3,300 residents, many of whom were Jehovah's Witnesses, Lauren's family faced a harsh reality, with prominent church members constantly reminding Lauren of her outcast status. The emotional stress eventually became too much to bear. Lauren turned to exercise to regain her health. She worked out regularly and made it her routine, which led to a dramatic change. Lauren became a fitness trainer and found success as a model. Despite being rejected by the church, Lauren appeared optimistic and confident to those around her. However, behind her pleasant exterior, Lauren was secretly struggling with chronic depression. She had been battling this condition for some time, and it had gotten worse since being ostracized by the church. As a result, Lauren often hid her true feelings behind a fake smile. Lauren's family was drowning in debt, on the brink of bankruptcy. Overwhelmed by the pressure of her own financial difficulties and emotional pain, Lauren devised a plan to solve all her problems at once. She began researching ways to end her life and videos on how to use a pistol. On February 15, 2018, Lauren left a heartbreaking note on the dining room table, meticulously cleaned the house, and sent messages to loved ones and Daniel's boss. And finally, Lauren flipped through all the family photos on her desk. Lauren texted her husband's boss at 9:24 a.m. saying that her husband Daniel had died in an accident and that she would provide more information later. However, she did not respond to her boss's subsequent messages. At 5:07 p.m. that same day, Lauren texted her cousin, saying that she was taking her family with her so they wouldn't have to suffer. She said that they would sleep until Christ was resurrected and hoped that her cousin would do better than her. Her cousin was frightened by the message and told Lauren not to harm herself or her family. Lauren had been suffering from mental health issues in recent months that her family had not known about. She had a gun and made the tragic decision to use it to kill her loved ones. Lauren's first victim was her husband, Daniel, 47, who was shot in the head while trying to escape from the basement where he was relaxing. Lauren used a pillow as a silencer to muffle the sound of the gunshot. After Daniel was shot, Lauren went upstairs to her daughter Bethany's sleeping room. Lauren shot her at point-blank range, instantly killing Bethany. Next, her son Stephen, who had his own house on the other side of town, Lauren tricked Stephen into coming to her house. When Stephen was busy with the task his mother had assigned him, his back turned, Lauren shot him at close range. The horror did not stop there. Lauren killed the family dog, placing its body in the bathtub. A neighbor heard these gunshots but thought someone was slamming the door. When the house became a cold morgue, Lauren meticulously cleaned it. Then Lauren used the gun to kill herself. Lauren's cousin, who had been trying to contact her, became concerned when she did not respond to their messages. The cousin decided to visit Lauren's home the following morning, February 16th, with a friend. When no one answered the door, they contacted the police. Upon arriving at the house, the police found the kitchen to be tidy and well organized, with a stocked refrigerator and handwritten labels on various items. A calendar was also hanging on the refrigerator. However, police discovered the family dog dead in the bathtub. This made police more cautious, initially fearing the possibility of an active shooter. As they continued to search the house, they found Stephen Stewart on the floor, shot while sitting on a chair in another room. In a bedroom, the police discovered Bethany's lifeless body, shot while she was asleep. A pillow had been used to muffle the sound of the gunshot, and the pillowcase showed signs of the shooting. The police also found Daniel Stewart's body on the basement floor in front of a couch, with his right hand still in his jeans pocket. Elsewhere in the house, Lauren was found at the foot of the stairs, with a pistol next to her and a gunshot wound between her eyes. 2 notes were discovered on the dining room table, one addressed to the medical examiner, the other a suicide note revealing Lauren's inner struggles. Lauren's note explained that she felt she had allowed evil into her heart by rejecting God's love. She believed that by killing her family, she could spare them from suffering. Through interviews with relatives, friends, and neighbors, it became clear that the couple had become reclusive after leaving the Jehovah's Witness church. Lauren's past struggles, particularly her battle with depression, were compounded by the stress of motherhood. Family members also revealed that Lauren, who was one of 11 siblings, had a history of depression that likely contributed to her actions. Lauren has become increasingly obsessed with her faith in recent years. Her family, including her father and sister, have not spoken to her in years. Lauren's mother died when she was 13. The tragic event has left a lasting impact on those close to the family. Joyce Taylor, a longtime friend, believes the murders were a direct result of the family's rejection by the Jehovah's Witnesses. Joyce Taylor and other former members reveal the harsh reality of leaving the faith. When someone leaves the Jehovah's Witnesses, they are often shunned by their own family members who remain in the church. This severe form of shunning can take a heavy emotional toll. According to Joyce Taylor, Lauren and Daniel's desire to give their children a college education conflicted with the church's teachings, which discourage such pursuits. This clash between their aspirations and the church's rigid doctrines ultimately led to a tragic outcome. The family was shunned in every way possible. As Joyce Taylor explained, when you're raised a Jehovah's Witness, the church controls many aspects of your life, including your friendships and associations. If you go against these rules, you risk being disfellowshipped or shunned. Joyce Taylor stormed into a Kingdom Hall meeting in Union Lake, seizing the opportunity to confront the congregation about a recent tragedy. She passionately criticized the gathering, her voice filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. 5 years ago, you withdrew your support from a small family, Joyce Taylor exclaimed. They had no one else to turn to, but you turned them away and shunned them. Why? Because they wanted to raise their children as they saw fit. Just 2 days ago, 4 people died because of your alienation, Joyce Taylor said. Her words sent shockwaves through the room, forcing her to push away members of her congregation as she expressed her pent-up frustration. Police investigations into Lauren's family revealed that she, her husband, and her sons were all using cannabis. Further investigation revealed that Lauren's horrific actions were the result of a combination of factors. These included feelings of loneliness, strained relationships with family and friends due to their differing religious views. These factors combined to add to her pain, ultimately leading her to commit a horrific act. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Brianna Zunino Dennison. Brianna Zunino Dennison, born March 29, 1988, Brianna's parents are Jeff and Bridget Dennison. When Brianna was 6, her father passed away, causing immense pain for the family. However, with the support of her loved ones, she persevered through the difficult time. Brianna spent her childhood in Reno, Nevada, and Mendocino, California, her mother's hometown. Her love of travel and exploration took her to numerous countries, including Hawaii, New York, Mexico, Jamaica, Japan, Italy, Egypt, Hungary, Austria, and France. Brianna has a deep affection for children and animals, especially her dog Ozzy. She completed her high school education at Reno High School in 2006 and is majoring in child psychology as a sophomore at Santa Barbara City College. During winter break, on January 20, 2008, Brianna returned to her hometown of Reno from Santa Barbara to spend time with friends and family. Brianna and her friends regularly attended events organized by Summer Winter Action Tours LLC, a tour company that caters to college students. They also attended the Martin Luther King Jr. Gala weekend in Reno. That day, Brianna returned home around 4 a.m. to her friend's house near the University of Nevada campus. Brianna slept over at McKay Court's house. However, when McKay Court woke up the next morning at around 9 a.m., Brianna was no longer there. A small bloodstain was found on the pillow where she had slept, and her cell phone, purse, and shoes were still at the house. McKay Court then contacted Brianna's parents and the local police in an attempt to locate Brianna. Police arrived and examined the scene. In the following days, police conducted forensic tests at the McKay Court home, where Brianna had been staying at the time of her abduction. During the investigation, police discovered DNA on the doorknob that belonged to an unidentified male. The blood on the pillow was confirmed to be Brianna's, leading police to focus on a theory that Brianna had been abducted. Police searched for Brianna in the University of Nevada Reno area, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the search. A DNA sample found on a doorknob the night Brianna disappeared was matched to at least 2 previous sex crimes in the same area. One occurred on November 13th, and the other on December 16, 2007. On January 29, 2008, a Reno woman said she knew a victim who had been held at gunpoint in a garage on the University of Nevada Reno campus in October 2007. Police released a description of the suspect based on identifying information provided by women who were sexually assaulted by the suspect. In an effort to find Brianna's abductor, police interviewed nearly 100 sex offenders who lived within a mile of the McKay Court home. However, none of them were linked to Brianna's disappearance. A search effort was organized, with some 1,700 volunteers, including then First Lady of Nevada Dawn Gibbons, participating in a virtual search of the area. Sadly, the search yielded no results. On February 15, 2008, a man named Albert Jimenez was returning from his lunch break at a Subway restaurant in Reno. As he walked down the street, he noticed bright orange sheets standing out among a pile of discarded tree branches in a ditch near Reno Business Park. Upon closer inspection, Albert discovered that the orange socks on the feet belonged to a deceased woman. Albert had heard about Brianna Dennison's disappearance but initially thought the description did not match the person on Brianna's missing person flyer. Without a cell phone, Albert rushed back to his workplace to contact the police to report the incident. Police arrived at the scene and confirmed the victim's identity as Brianna Dennison. The investigation revealed that Brianna had been brutally attacked and murdered. Near her body, police found a pair of panties, which contained DNA from the perpetrator and DNA from an unidentified woman. Police suspected that the panties did not belong to Brianna, believing that they had been left there to distract police. Police then made a public appeal, asking anyone who recognized the panties to come forward to help identify the perpetrator. However, no one came forward. On November 25, 2008, James Michael Bella, 27, of Sparks, Nevada, James was arrested while he was taking his son to the Stepping Stones Children's Center in Reno. He was booked into the Washoe County Jail on charges of murder, first-degree kidnapping, and sexual assault. Further investigation revealed that James was a former Marine with a history of violence, including a 2001 arrest for threatening his ex-girlfriend's neighbor with a knife. The following day, November 26, 2008, the Reno Police Department held a press conference to confirm that James' DNA matched the DNA found at Brianna's crime scene. During the press conference, it was also revealed that a friend of James' girlfriend anonymously accused James, through the secret witness program on November 1, 2008, after James' girlfriend confided in the friend that she had found underwear in James's truck while they were returning from Washington, where James had taken a job in March 2008. After reports of Brianna's case appeared in the media, including a police sketch of the suspect and a description of a vehicle involved in a similar incident a month earlier, police began questioning James, anonymously provided by a witness. However, James denied any wrongdoing and refused to provide a DNA sample for analysis. His girlfriend was also questioned by police, and she allowed them to take a DNA sample from her and James' 4-year-old son. DNA testing of James' son showed that, in this case, James' DNA was left at the house where Brianna was abducted and at the scene of the rape. Furthermore, during the trip to Washington, it was discovered that James had sold his truck in Idaho, which matched the description of the vehicle used in the sexual assault. Police announced at a press conference that the truck was being transported back to Reno for a thorough examination and would be used as evidence in the case against James. On May 27, 2010, the jury returned a guilty verdict in James's trial, finding James responsible for the murder of Brianna Dennison. After 9 hours of deliberations, the jury convicted James of kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder. In an effort to avoid the death penalty, James' defense team presented mitigating circumstances, citing James' traumatic childhood with an alcoholic, abusive father. The jurors rejected the mitigating factors and gave James the death sentence instead. Later, on July 30, 2010, James received 4 more life sentences for other crimes, including rape and kidnapping of 2 victims prior to Brianna's abduction and murder. James's appeals have been denied over. The case of Brianna Zunino Dennison is a story of pain, strength, and determination in the pursuit of justice. Brianna's family remains strong and persistent in the fight for justice. The collective efforts of everyone together make a safer world. And may Brianna rest in peace. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Georgia Williams. Georgia Williams was born on September 17, 1995, in Telford, Shropshire, England. She grew up in a close and loving family with her parents, Lynette and Steve Williams, and her older sister Scarlett. From an early age, Georgia demonstrated a kind and thoughtful nature, consistently looking for ways to help others and make those around her happy. This admirable quality eventually becomes her weakness. Despite being bullied in middle school, but Georgia's life improved in high school. She made a group of friends and became a well-liked and popular student. Her kind nature and good leadership skills helped her win the position of class monitor. She pursued her passion for helping others by joining the Air Cadets Corps with the ultimate goal of becoming a medical officer in the Royal Air Force. At 17, Georgia started working at a local gas station where she quickly became friends with her co-workers. One of them was Jamie Reynolds, a 22-year-old man who seemed quiet and isolated from the rest of the group. Georgia, being a kind and caring person, reached out to Jamie in friendship, wanting to help him feel less alone. Thanks to her efforts, Jamie started to fit in at work, participating in group activities and making friends with his co-workers. As time went on, Jamie developed strong feelings for Georgia, seeing her as the only person who had shown him kindness and believed in him. Feeling hopeful, Jamie started to think that maybe Georgia felt the same way about him. Emboldened by his newfound confidence, he mustered the nerve to express his true feelings to Georgia and inquired if she would be open of a romantic relationship. However, Georgia, being considerate of Jamie's feelings, let him down gently. She explained that she didn't want to ruin their friendship by getting romantically involved. Jamie seems to respect Georgia's choice and tries to maintain their friendship. However, he is actually harboring an increasingly unhealthy obsession with her. One day, while they were working together at the gas station, Jamie opened up to Georgia about his unhappiness with his life. He told her that he wanted to quit his job and pursue his true passions. Jamie had always dreamed of turning his passions into a career, and Georgia was eager to support him. One day, they started talking about his hobbies, and Jamie revealed his love for photography. Georgia saw an opportunity and encouraged Jamie to pursue it as a career. Excited about the idea, Jamie asked Georgia to help him create a professional portfolio and asked if she would be his first model. Georgia, being a good friend, agreed to help. They scheduled a photo shoot for Sunday, May 26, 2013, at Jamie's parents' house, with a few mutual friends joining in. However, as the day approached, Georgia found herself in a difficult situation. Her family was hosting a barbecue, and her grandparents, whom she hadn't seen in a long time, would be attending. Georgia thought about canceling the photo shoot at the last minute, but she didn't want to let Jamie down. She decided to keep her commitment and assured her family that she would only be a short drive away. She planned to quickly take a few photos and then return to her family's barbecue, hoping to make both her friend and family happy. On that day, Georgia got ready quickly, doing her hair and makeup, and wearing jeans and a leather jacket. Her father complimented her as she left home at 7:30 p.m., saying she looked beautiful, like Sandy from Greece. Georgia's family expected her to return home soon. However, as the hours went by and she didn't come home, her loved ones started to worry. At first, her mother wasn't too concerned, thinking Georgia was probably just busy with the photo shoot or spending time with friends. She sent a text asking when the photo shoot would end. Georgia replied, saying it had already ended and that she was with friends and might be home late. Her mother wasn't worried after getting the text, as it seemed like a typical message from Georgia, with the usual 3 kissy face emojis at the end. Georgia's mother trusted her to be responsible, which is why she wasn't worried at first. As the night went on, Georgia's parents went to bed, thinking she would be home by morning. However, when they woke up the next day and Georgia still hadn't returned, they started to feel uneasy. Georgia's mother sent her a text message at 6:30 a.m. asking where she was. But it wasn't until 7:30 a.m. that a response arrived, saying George had spent the night at a friend's house and her phone battery was running out. The message said that if George didn't respond again, it was because her phone had died. George's mother was unaware that the messages were not written by her daughter. On May 27th, George's parents thought she would come home after a music festival. They expected her to come home the next morning because she was excited about her first driving lesson. As the night went on and George didn't come home, her parents became more and more anxious. They stayed up late waiting for her, but there was no sign of her. They contacted relatives and friends to see if anyone had heard from George, but no one had seen or heard from her in days. This makes them even more insecure and unsure of what is going on. When Georgia failed to return home the next morning for her scheduled driving lesson, her family quickly reported her missing to the police. They gave the police all the information they had, but they only knew that Georgia had been to a photo shoot at Jamie Reynolds' home and nothing about her whereabouts after that. The police started investigating and focused on Jamie Reynolds. What they found out about him was alarming and raised concerns for Georgia's safety. It turns out that in 2008, Jamie got into trouble with the law for assaulting and attempting to strangle a teenager. Despite the seriousness of the incident, he was let off with a warning and not charged. When the police discovered this, they suspected Jamie even more and considered him the main suspect in George's disappearance. They went to his home, but no one answered. They broke in. They searched the premises but couldn't find Jamie, so prompting a large-scale manhunt to track him down. After conducting a thorough investigation at the petrol station, it was clear that none of Jamie and George's co-workers had seen them. Their absence from work was unusual and raised concerns, as it was out of character for both of them. Although Jamie's parents were away on vacation, but they had already given the authorities key details about Jamie's van, such as its registration information. The police in Shropshire quickly shared this information with police agencies nationwide, asking them to be on the lookout for the van. Soon, authorities located Jamie in Glasgow, Scotland, which is 428 miles away from his home. His abrupt departure from the country, which came without warning, raised concerns and hinted at a potential problem. On May 30th, police in Glasgow arrested Jamie Reynolds at a local hotel due to suspicions of kidnapping Georgia. They immediately questioned him about Georgia's location, but Jamie claimed he didn't know where she was and provided no useful information to the investigators. He was then taken to Shropshire for more questioning. Meanwhile, Georgia's family and friends waited nervously for news, but what they heard about the investigation was deeply upsetting. The lack of progress was crushing, making their pain even worse. With Jamie in custody as the main suspect, the police searched his home for evidence. During the search, they found a camera with an SD card, but their hopes of finding important clues were crushed when they discovered that all the files had been deleted. The camera was sent to the police station for forensic analysis, where experts worked to recover the deleted files. Eventually, they managed to retrieve the data, revealed a shocking secret to the investigation. Among the recovered files are several images taken on the day Georgia went missing, providing a haunting look at she's final moments. The initial photos showed Georgia in normal poses at the start of the photo shoot, confirming she was at Jamie's residence that day. Although she appeared content and cooperative, it was clear Georgia had no idea about Jamie's sinister intentions. Sadly, she unintentionally entered a hazardous situation without realizing the risks, which ultimately led to her tragic death. As authorities went through the images, the tone became increasingly dark and unsettling. Subsequent photos reveal a series of harrowing incidents, depicting a distressed Georgia stripped of her clothes, standing weakly on a red recycling bin. Her hands appear to be tied behind her back with a rope hanging ominously above her. The footage captured Jamie Reynolds' horrific act. He filmed Georgia's final moments, showing her desperate struggle for breath. He later committed heinous acts of necrophilia, violating her lifeless body in various rooms of the house. Jamie's parents' bed was where he further compounded the horror. He took hundreds of additional photos showing Georgia in degrading positions, documenting his depravity. He stripped her of her jewelry, keeping them as trophies of his horrific crime. The police conducted a thorough search of Jamie's home and found a large collection of explicit photographs and videos, including content that depicted extreme violence, sexual assault, and murder. It was discovered that Jamie was not only in possession of these materials, but also actively involved in creating content that featured violent acts. Jamie's parents were alerted to their son's disturbing interests and immediately ended their vacation to meet with authorities. They revealed that Jamie had been exposed to violent and explicit content from the age of 14. It is possible that he was exposed to such content even earlier. Although his parents tried to intervene by blocking access to certain websites, Jamie found a way to circumvent their efforts. At the age of 14, he contacted the internet provider and set up his own private Wi-Fi connection, which allowed him to continue accessing the blocked websites without his parents' knowledge. When Jamie's parents first found out he was watching these videos, they became worried and contacted the police and Child Protective Services. However, the authorities said they couldn't take any action because watching such content wasn't against the law. As the police looked into the matter further, they found a set of notebooks containing 40 separate stories written by Jamie. These stories were centered around harming, sexually assaulting, and murdering women. Additionally, investigators discovered that Jamie had searched social media platforms, printed and marked images of young girls with nooses around their necks. One of the stories, titled "Georgia Williams Surprised," has a very similar plot to the incidents that led to Georgia's death. Authorities believe this narrative may have been a pre-planned scenario, intended to be carried out from the start. Jamie began writing this narrative in January and finished it just 3 weeks before the murder. Despite being questioned, Jamie refused to reveal the location of Georgia's body, insisting he was innocent. As a result, investigators had to painstakingly reconstruct Jamie's movements from the Monday morning after Georgia's murder. They started by reviewing surveillance footage of Jamie refueling his vehicle at a petrol station. Unbeknownst to them at the time, Georgia's body was hidden in the back of Jamie's van. After refueling, Jamie drove 60 miles to a movie theater, leaving Georgia's body in the van parked in the theater's lot. He then went inside to watch a movie. However, police lost track of Jamie after he left the theater and issued a public appeal for help finding him. The appeal was successful, with people reporting sightings of Jamie's van near the New York G Mountain Pass. The area, with its dense woods and muddy terrain, was where Jamie tried to evade capture. Locals remembered Jamie in his van, especially after it got stuck in the mud and Good Samaritans helped him get it out. Police followed up on this lead and searched the wooded area where Jamie was spotted. Unfortunately, they found Georgia's naked body in this secluded spot. Georgia's body was returned to Shropshire after being recovered. A post-mortem examination revealed she died from asphyxiation due to a ligature around her neck. Forensic analysis also showed bruising on her back, indicating Jamie had used his knee to press her down. Initially, Jamie denied any involvement in Georgia's murder, but on the first day of his trial in December 2013, he suddenly stood up and pleaded guilty to all charges. During the trial, Georgia's father gave a heartfelt address to the court. They had to endure the pain for a long time as they witnessed their daughter's body lying motionless in the hospital's rest house, a traumatic experience that haunted both him and his wife. The trial also uncovered Jamie's previous run-ins with the law. In 2008, he received a warning from a judge for keeping a 1-year-old girl captive in his home. A disturbing incident foreshadowing Georgia's tragic death. In 2011, Jamie was criticized for recklessly backing his car into a girl's vehicle. This incident occurred after the girl had turned down his romantic advances. Although the case was eventually closed, Judge Mr. Justice Wilkie expressed serious concerns about Jamie's behavior, calling him a sexual deviant and warning about his potential to become a dangerous serial offender. As a result, Jamie received a whole life term, a sentence typically reserved for the most severe crimes, meaning he would spend the rest of his life in prison without parole. At the time, Jamie was the 46th person to receive this sentence and the youngest person in history to be given a whole life term. During sentencing, Judge Justice Wilkie highlighted the extreme suffering Georgia endured, emphasizing the torturous nature of her experience. Jamie's obsession with violent and sadistic pornography had led to a horrific display of control over his victim, ultimately resulting in her tragic death. Jamie Reynolds hung his head in shame as Georgia's parents and sister listened to the disturbing details of her death and the abuse she suffered at his hands. The courtroom was extremely tense as the jury saw gruesome images of Georgia's final moments, causing her family to leave in distress. In 2014, Jamie tried to appeal his life sentence but was unsuccessful. A review of the case the following year criticized police officers, children's services, and mental health professionals for their handling of Jamie before Georgia's murder. The review found that these agencies failed to work together properly, despite Jamie having come to the attention of law enforcement 5 years earlier for attempting to strangle another girl. Georgia's parents were deeply saddened by the report, regretting the missed chances to intervene and prevent their daughter's death. They stated that they cried when they read about the agency's failures, as it was clear that Jamie was likely to commit murder. They believed that Georgia's death could have been prevented. Outside the courtroom, Georgia's father shared the family's overwhelming sadness, stating that no sentence could ever satisfy them because it wouldn't bring Georgia back to life. He emphasized that their loss was irreparable and that Jamie, despite his lengthy prison sentence, still had the one thing he took from their daughter, life. He noted that what to cause them grief is that Jamie, even while serving a life sentence, still gets to live. Jamie Reynolds remains in prison to this day. Georgia's mother, Lynette, later wrote a book titled Our Georgia, in which she shared the family's traumatic experiences. The book highlights the failures of the legal system that allowed Jamie, a violent film enthusiast, to remain at large and eventually commit murder. This book is a heartfelt tribute to Georgia and provides an insight into the devastating aftermath of her tragic passing. Georgia's death caused immense pain to those who loved her, leaving a huge gap that can never be filled. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of the Parente family. William Michael Parente was born on July 20, 1949, in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. His parents, Willie and Rulon Parente, raised him with values rooted in their family's history of law enforcement. His father, a New York trooper, played a significant role in shaping his upbringing. As an only child, William received his parents' undivided attention. He spent summers enjoying the sun with his family in Long Beach. William pursued his education at Brooklyn College and Brooklyn Law School, thanks in part to the financial support of his uncle, Anthony J. Russo. William worked in his uncle's Manhattan law office on the Avenue of the Americas. There, he built a reputation as a thoughtful lawyer and dedication to his family. William was known for his demeanor, courteous which extended to everyone. He worked diligently for long hours, but made sure not to overwork himself. Unlike many of his peers, he refrained from using profanity or engaging in post-work gatherings for drinks. His disciplined lifestyle and commitment to kindness set him apart in the legal community. Even on difficult days, William maintained his composure and treated everyone with respect. In 1977, after being admitted to the New York bar, William married Betty Mazzarella. He began his career at a prestigious Wall Street law firm but made a significant change in 1988. When Betty became pregnant with their first child, William decided to start his own private practice. This change happened around the same time the family moved to Garden City, New York, an affluent community in Nassau County, Long Island. Despite living in the suburbs, the William family remained connected to their Brooklyn roots. They regularly returned to their old neighborhood to enjoy local delicacies, reconnect with old friends, visit their mother, and relive cherished childhood memories. By the time he was 60, William Parente had become an experienced estate and tax attorney. He ran his practice from an office in a Queens shopping center. His wife, Betty Mazzarella, 58, dedicated her time to taking care of their home and organizing charity fundraisers in their local community. Betty was actively involved in church activities, which were an integral part of their neighborhood's social fabric. The couple had 2 daughters, Stephanie and Catherine. Stephanie, the elder daughter, was 19 years old and a sophomore at Loyola College, studying speech pathology with plans to pursue dentistry in the future. Her friendly nature made her well-liked by her classmates and teachers. She also maintained close relationships with her friends back home in Garden City. Their younger daughter, Catherine, showed remarkable talent at just 11 years old, earning her admiration from teachers and staff at Garden City Middle School. Her exceptional abilities indicated a promising future ahead. In the later stages of his legal career, William became involved in what he called bridge loans. He acted as a financial intermediary, similar to a bank, allegedly using assets from investment portfolios under his management to finance these loans. When an investor asked for their money back, William Parente was unable to return the funds or explain why he couldn't. On April 15, 2009, William, along with his wife Betty and youngest daughter Catherine, took a trip to visit their eldest daughter Stephanie in Towson, planning to surprise her. They booked room 1029 at the Sharon Hotel, near the Talone Town Center Mall, with a reservation until the 19th. When they arrived, Stephanie's friend was surprised, given that classes had just resumed after the Easter break and Stephanie was busy preparing for a chemistry exam. The visit was unexpected, especially since the parents had already planned to visit on Friday the 17th to discuss Stephanie's study abroad plans in England. Despite the initial surprise, the visit seemed like a normal family reunion. However, what took place that day remains unclear. Based on the evidence, here is what happened. Betty Mazzarella Parente was the first victim. She was brutally assaulted and suffocated in bed on Sunday morning. Later, Catherine, the youngest daughter, met a similar fate, dying from the same violence as her mother. Catherine's body was placed beside her mother's. On Sunday afternoon, Stephanie arrived at the hotel after leaving her campus and tragically met the same demise as her mother and younger sister. Her body was laid beside theirs on the bed. None of the victims showed signs of struggle. No evidence of drugging or physical restraint was found. William Parente carefully planned the annihilation of his family. On that somber Sunday, around midnight, one of Stephanie's close friends and roommates grew worried about her absence from their dorm room. After hours of worrying, the roommate called the hotel room phone to reach Stephanie. The roommate knew Stephanie planned to return to the dorm to study for final exams, so they were surprised when William Parente, Stephanie's father, answered the call. William explained that Stephanie was staying at the hotel with family. The roommate accepted this excuse and ended the call, unaware that Stephanie was already dead. Later, the roommate thought back on the conversation and remembered that William's tone seemed unusual. On Monday morning, William Parente ended his life by using a knife he had bought at a nearby mall. He inflicted fatal injuries on himself in the hotel bathroom. When the family failed to check out, hotel staff became concerned. School Loyola College also raised concerns about Stephanie's unexplained absence from classes, especially since it was a crucial time for her final exams. The college contacted the hotel, requesting a welfare check on Stephanie and her family. At 3 p.m., a housekeeper tried to enter their 10th floor room but found the door locked and received no response. The housekeeper alerted other staff, and a hotel manager entered the room. The manager found William Parente's lifeless body in the bathroom. having taken his own life with a knife. The manager quickly called emergency services and continued to investigate. As he entered the room further, he found 3 bodies carefully arranged on one of the beds. The victims were Betty Mazzarella and her 2 daughters, Stephanie and Catherine. The Baltimore County Police were immediately called to the scene, and all other guests on the 10th floor were relocated as part of the investigation. The police also took the family's Mercedes-Benz SUV from the hotel parking lot. After investigating, they determined that William Parente had committed a murder-suicide on that Sunday. And the police found that the causes of death were asphyxiation and blunt force trauma. They believe that Betty and Catherine were the first victims, followed by Stephanie. The police think that one of William's last interactions was with Stephanie's boyfriend, who tried to call Stephanie around midnight. However, Stephanie had already been killed by her father by then. Shortly after the call, William likely went to the bathroom and took his own life using a knife he had bought earlier from the mall. It is believed that William Parente's decision to kill his family and then commit suicide may have stemmed from an investigation into his possible involvement in a major fraud. William Parente was accused of being part of a Ponzi scheme, a type of investment scam where money from new investors is used to pay existing ones, often resulting in huge financial losses. Investors have been scammed of around $20 million, with one investor claiming a loss of $450,000. Investigations showed that William had issued bounced checks totaling $245,000 to investors, leading to further complaints to the New York Attorney General's office. After William Parente's death, some investors came forward with losses totaling millions of dollars. A colleague of William's made a poignant observation: financial losses can be recovered, but the loss of human life is irreparable. Friends and family have struggled to overcome their feelings of grief following the horrific incident. A memorial service was held at Loyola College on Monday night to honor Stephanie's memory. The family William Parente home, once full of life, became a somber space filled with tributes such as flowers and candlelit vigils. A funeral service was held at St. Joseph's Church in Garden City to commemorate Betty and her daughters. According to reports, Catherine's middle school classmates were transported by bus to attend the service. Stephanie's college peers made a significant effort to join, driving from Talon and arriving as early as 4 a.m. for the morning ceremony. The family was laid to rest together at St. Charles Cemetery in East Farmingdale, New York. In contrast, William Parente received a separate, private funeral service at a different location. He was cremated, but the location of his ashes was not publicly disclosed. The horrific actions of this merciless perpetrator have caused immense distress for the victims and their loved ones. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of the Ewell family. Dale Ewell was born in Ohio during the Great Depression. This challenging time in him the value of hard work and the importance of money, as he learned to appreciate every dollar he made. His family struggled financially, which likely motivated him to become determined and ambitious. Dale married Glee Michelle, a multi-talented woman, who worked as an elementary school teacher, a translator for the CIA, and served on a commission at the State Bar of California. They had 2 children, Tiffany born in 1967 and Dana in 1971. Dale's success provided the Ewell family with a comfortable life, including a home in Sunnyside, a beachfront property in Peraro Dunes, luxury cars, and designer clothing. After serving in the Air Force, Dale became a successful businessman. He eventually became the president and owner of Western Piper Sales Incorporated, a company that sold small aircraft. The primary source of the Ewell income came from selling light aircraft and investing heavily in the stock market. After establishing a successful aviation business, Dale expanded into buying several farms, accumulating substantial wealth. Together, Dale and Glee were worth an estimated $8 million, embodying the American dream. Despite their wealth, they lived modestly. Their children chose different directions in life. Tiffany pursued a similar career to her parents, whereas Dana chose a distinctly different route. At university, Dana presented himself as a successful entrepreneur, falsely claiming to be the source of his family's wealth. This fabricated story gained attention from a local newspaper and was even included in his school yearbook. In 1990, while attending Santa Clara University, Dana was fixated on wealth and luxury. He owned a BMW and had access to funds, allowing him to indulge in expensive items like jewelry. From a young age, Dana had a habit of lying and making up stories. Despite being intelligent and well-educated, Dana's ambitions went beyond comfort, wealth, and a promising future. He had the same ambitions as his father, but he didn't have the drive to achieve them in a proper and lawful way. Dana began fabricating elaborate and false stories about his accomplishments and importance while he was a student at the University of Santa Clara. He lied to both faculty and peers, claiming he was the head of a multi-million-dollar company. His false narrative included starting as a stockbroker at 18, moving to aircraft sales, and eventually becoming president of his own aircraft manufacturing company. The tension between Dana and his father, Dale, was largely unknown to others. Dana's tall tales may have caused his father embarrassment and contributed to their conflicts. Despite Dale's humble beginnings and generous support for his children, Dana seemed to have an excessive sense of entitlement. Dana Ewell presented himself as excessively self-centered and arrogant, prioritizing his wealth and social standing above all else. On Easter Sunday, April 19, 1992, the weather in Sunnyside, California was mild with partial sunshine, resulting in a pleasant afternoon. Dale, 59, spent the Easter weekend at his beach house with his 57-year-old wife, Glee, and their 24-year-old daughter, Tiffany. Glee and Tiffany returned to their home in Sunnyside by car, while Dale flew his private plane to his hangar and then drove home. When they arrived, they were ambushed. Tiffany was shot in the head and killed, followed by Glee, who was shot multiple times. The killers stayed in the house, waiting for Dale to arrive. 30 minutes later, Dale arrived home and was also fatally shot as he entered the house from the garage. 2 days later, Dana, the youngest member of the family, tried to contact his parents but was unable to reach them. Dana had spent the Easter weekend in San Francisco with his girlfriend and her father, an FBI agent. On April 21, 1992, the family's housekeeper, Juanita, arrived at the house for work and found Tiffany's body lying in a pool of blood in the kitchen. Juanita was distraught and sought help from a neighbor, who called the police. Meanwhile, Dana was still in Monterey, California. At the time of the murders, Dana was contacted by the authorities. His girlfriend's father quickly arranged for him to fly to Fresno, and Dana was visibly upset during this time. The police then started a thorough investigation, spending many days collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses. The crime scene was made to look like a robbery. However, experienced detectives believed the scene was deliberately staged to make it appear as though the family had been attacked and then killed by an intruder. Upon further examination, detectives found several irregularities, including the lack of weapons, bloodstains, footprints, or DNA evidence. Instead, the detectives found that the attack was carefully planned and carried out. The attacker was a skilled shooter, missing only one shot, and had even picked up the spent bullet casings inside the house. Investigators found a box of 9mm ammunition that Dale had purchased. It was later discovered that it had been used in the murder. The home appeared to have been ransacked, but nothing valuable was missing. There was no evidence of forced entry, and the alarm, which was usually turned on, had been turned off. Investigators thoroughly examined the victims' backgrounds, searching for any clues that might be connected to their deaths. They looked into Dale's past dealings, which included selling airplanes to an individual later convicted of drug smuggling in the 1970s, and a questionable real estate transaction with Dale's brother that potentially put investors at risk of losing millions. The police thoroughly investigated and eliminated all other potential suspects with motives. Ultimately, they concentrating on Dana, as he was the one who would benefit the most from the tragic event. As the only surviving member of the Ewell family and the main beneficiary of the estate, Dana naturally became a person of interest. Even though he had a solid alibi, having been with his girlfriend and her FBI agent father at the time of the murders, the police couldn't shake their suspicions about him. Dana's actions did not ease the concerns of others, but rather intensified their suspicions about his involvement in the murder. Although he outwardly showed distress and even offered a $50,000 reward for the capture of the killer, his grief seemed insincere. His reaction to the horrific killing of family members seemed surprisingly subdued, as he displayed little of the shock and sorrow that people typically exhibit in response to such a traumatic event. Instead of focusing on mourning the loss of his loved ones, Dana seemed more concerned with his parents' wills and inheritance. He did something disturbing, inviting a friend to view the house while there was still obvious blood on it, demonstrating a disregard for the victims. Furthermore, he allegedly expressed contempt for the police investigation, calling the investigators dummies who would never solve the case. Dana eluded authorities for 3 years, during which time they thoroughly investigated every lead to help solve the case. The situation worsened after Dale's brothers reported Dana to the authorities, claiming he had done something wrong. According to them, Dana became furious when he heard the will being read, as he learned that he wouldn't have full access to the $8 million estate until he was in his 30s. Dana reportedly slammed his hands on the table and screamed, asking why his father could do this to him. The trust stipulated that his parents would cover his expenses until he was 25, then he would receive investment dividends until he was 30. At 30, he would have access to half of the estate, with the remaining half available at 35. Before the funeral, the Ewell brothers act to prevent Dana from reclaiming what he believes is his. However, Dana managed to obtain around $300,000 from an insurance policy. Dana's uncles actively prevented him from inheriting his father's assets, causing him significant frustration. Despite the growing scrutiny from investigators and accusations from his own family members that he was involved in the murder to gain control of the family estate, Dana showed no signs of worry. He continued to live a lavish lifestyle, showering his girlfriend Monica with expensive gifts and even helping with her education costs. However, it was unclear where his money was coming from. Investigators suspected that money was a key factor in the murders and dug deeper. They discovered that Dana had been stealing money from various sources, including his grandmother's trust account, which had held $400,000. By the time detectives stepped in, the grandmother was left with only $22,000 to cover her care at a nursing home. The discovery that Dana had been exploiting his grandmother for personal gain further strengthened the police's suspicions about his character. However, authorities still need concrete evidence to prove Dana's involvement in the murder. Joel, one of Dana's college acquaintances, was particularly drawn to Dana's stories of a wealthy, successful lifestyle. Joel found Dana's apparent ability to effortlessly attract beautiful women especially intriguing. People around were surprised by their friendship, as they seemed to have little in common. Dana was driven by a desire for higher social status, while Joel's interests lay in video games, firearms, and explosives. Despite their differences, Joel's friendship with Dana gave him the opportunity to attend fancy parties and meet attractive women. Shortly after the Ewell family murders, Joel dropped out of school and soon became Dana's roommate in the Ewell family's former home. This marked a significant development in the investigation. Both Dana and Joel started making unusual purchases, such as helicopter flying lessons, despite Joel having no apparent source of income. As a result, investigators began surveilling both, monitoring their communications through pagers and payphones. Authorities cloned Dana's pager and tapped his landline in May 1993. An officer overheard Joel discussing the investigation on a payphone, saying, "They don't have evidence, they'll try to catch you in a lie." Meanwhile, Dana continued spending lavishly, buying a new car for his girlfriend and paying her law school tuition. After using up the insurance payout, he took $400,000 from his grandmother's account, leaving her with only $22,000 for her nursing home expenses. In 1994, investigators shifted their focus to forensic analysis, which revealed that the murder weapon was a rare 9mm assault rifle made in Colorado. Records from the company showed that a rifle had been bought by Innes Jack Pond just before April 1992. Notably, Jack was a high school friend of Joel. When questioned, Jack first denied buying the rifle, then claimed he bought it as a birthday present for himself, and said the gun was later stolen. The evidence against Dana and Joel continued to mount. At one point, detectives visited Dana at his university dorm and told him they believed Joel was responsible for killing his family. Dana stayed silent, visibly pale. After the detectives departed, Dana and his girlfriend, Monica, promptly contacted Joel's brother, Radovic, but they did not realize that they were being followed by the police. On March 2, 1995, police arrested Dana, Joel, and Peter, Joel's brother, and Jack Pond. Peter had made a deal with the authorities, agreeing to testify against his younger brother and Dana in exchange for immunity. Peter confessed to the police that he had made a homemade silencer and attached it to the murder weapon. He also admitted to getting rid of the gun barrel, Joel's tennis shoes, and some gun magazines. Peter said he did these things with the help of Jack Pond. When Jack was arrested, he gave a different account of the gun. He said he bought the gun for Joel but didn't know it was going to be used for the murders. Jack also confirmed that he and Peter had disposed of evidence together. Jack received immunity in exchange for his testimony, just like Peter. As a result of statements made by Peter and Jack, the barrel of the murder weapon was found buried in a field in Rica. Unlike Peter and Jack, Dana and Joel were not offered plea deals. They were charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances, which made them eligible for the death penalty. The trial began in late 1997. Dana and Joel, who had previously been close friends and had even lived together in the house where the murders occurred, now had separate lawyers and took different stances during the trial. Prosecutors argued that Dana's motive for the murders was greed, claiming he had promised Joel a share of the inheritance. Dana's lawyer argued that he was innocent, suggesting that Joel and Jack had planned and carried out the murders. Joel's lawyer acknowledged the strong evidence against his client and focused on trying to save him from the death penalty. During the trial, Jack Pond testified that he had bought the murder weapon for Joel and helped dispose of it. He also said Joel had given him details of the incidents on the day of the murder, in April 1992. According to Jack, Dana had asked Joel for a favor that he found hard to refuse. Having taken steps to avoid leaving DNA evidence behind, Joel carried out Dana's plan by entering the Ewell residence. He shaved off all body hair and then waited 12 hours on a plastic sheet to minimize the risk of leaving any traces, including an eyelash. He was also instructed to retrieve all bullet casings. Tiffany was shot in the back of the head and died instantly, without seeing her killer. Glee, however, saw Joel and tried to escape to the office, but was shot and severely injured. Joel pursued her and eventually killed her. During the trial, it was revealed that Joel had shot Glee multiple times at close range, and that she had recognized him as a friend of Dana's who had visited the family a month earlier. After killing Glee, Joel reloaded his gun and put on new gloves, then waited for Dale to arrive, whom he also murdered. On May 27, 1998, after an 8-month trial, the jury delivered a finding Dana Ewell and Joel guilty on all charges. However, they could not agree on the sentencing. 2 votes saved Joel from the death penalty, while Dana escaped the death penalty by just 1 vote. In the end, both received 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. Dana was imprisoned at Corcoran State Prison, 50 miles south of Fresno. He was among inmates like Charles Manson. His grandmother, whom he stole from, died in 1999. Dana claims to have undergone a spiritual transformation and become a Christian while in prison. Joel was imprisoned at Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California. Meanwhile, Jack Pond pursued a career in law, becoming an attorney. Monica Zent broke up with Dana, finished law school, and established a successful law practice. Although Monica was thoroughly investigated, no evidence connected her to the crime. The only suspicious aspects were her initial unwillingness to cooperate and that some of the funds were used to help pay for her law school expenses. Dana Ewell's actions can be summed up by 3 words: greed, entitlement, and heartlessness. His extreme desire for wealth led him to manipulate and betray those closest to him, ultimately leading to the tragic deaths of his family members. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of the Foster family. Christopher Foster had always been considered a success. His mother, Enid, described him as someone who actively pursued financial opportunities from an early age. Along with his younger brother, Andrew, he aspired to follow in the footsteps of their late father, who had been a sales manager. Although they both aimed to become successful businessmen, Chris and Andrew had had a tense relationship since they were children. Andrew later explained that Chris's confidence and assertiveness had overshadowed Andrew's quiet nature. Despite this, both brothers were very close to their mother, Enid. In 1987, Chris married Jill, a housewife, and they had their daughter Kirsty in 1993. Chris's path to wealth began in the late 80s when he worked as a mattress salesman and used inexpensive pizza boxes for insulation. His life changed dramatically after he founded a successful engineering company. This business made Chris a self-made millionaire through the development of an innovative insulation material that became essential in the oil industry. The Piper Alpha oil rig explosion on July 6, 1988, had led to a catastrophic fire that lasted for days and claimed the lives of 167 people. After watching the news, Chris saw an opportunity in this tragedy and identified a market niche for fireproof insulation specifically for oil and gas rigs. Although many oil companies showed interest, they wanted certification of the product's effectiveness before signing a contract. To prove its value, Chris took the financial risk of mortgaging his house to fund an experiment. The test was successful. His product, OverShield, showed exceptional resilience compared to other insulation materials when exposed to fire. It even received a rare A1 fire test rating. Major oil companies quickly placed orders, making Christopher Foster a millionaire almost overnight. Reports suggested that he earned so much money that he didn't know how to spend it all. As his business grew, Christopher's annual turnover increased significantly from £50,000 to £1 million. By 2004, Chris's net worth had been reported to be £10 million. That same year, his wife Jill noticed a house in Shropshire Life magazine. It was Usbaston House, a beautiful mansion in Maesbrook, a wealthy village in Shropshire, England. The estate was 16 acres in size, had its own lake and equestrian grounds. Despite being offered at around £1.5 million, the house still needed repairs. Jill was so intrigued that Chris made an offer the next morning. Foster's family quickly sold their house and moved to Usbaston House. Chris then invested a further £50,000 to install a swimming pool and landscape the property. After settling down, Chris led a lavish lifestyle. He bought 2 Porsches, one for himself and one for Jill, a James Bond-style Aston Martin, Range Rovers, and many other vehicles. Their daughter Kirsty attended a private boarding school, and Chris also bought her several horses. Kirsty spent time with her horses when not at school and participated in equestrian competitions. Friends described her as quiet, thoughtful, and kind. In addition, Chris also bought 4 dogs and several pigeons. He further enhanced their lives by hiring a butler and a personal assistant, and the house had antique furniture worth more than £200,000. Chris's most expensive hobby was his passion for shooting, demonstrated by his expensive gun collection, each costing between £12,000 and £12,500, equivalent to nearly $20,000 at the time. Chris often attended shooting parties that could last 3 days, with bills running up to £8,000. He had a habit of leaving guns around the house. Occasionally, when pigeons made a mess of Chris's car, he would shoot them, much to Jill's frustration. In one disturbing incident, when Kirsty's black Labrador began disturbing the sheep, Chris was unable to control the dog and let it down a country road to shoot it in the head. Chris was a successful businessman but lacked a long-term vision. Notoriously impulsive, he craved instant gratification and was quick to cut ties with people who annoyed him. Chris enjoyed being admired and envied by others for his wealth, and social status was very important to him. Over time, both Chris and Jill moved up the social ladder, and it became clear to those close to Chris that he wanted to move away from his roots in Wolverhampton. Jill enjoyed shopping sprees and spent her days doing self-care activities like nail and hair appointments, along with beauty treatments like manicures and Botox injections. Chris and his family regularly went on luxury vacations, staying in luxury hotels and enjoying the best food. These lavish trips could sometimes cost up to £20,000 each, and Chris didn't hesitate to pay. However, unbeknownst to his friends and family, Chris had reached his financial limit and began withdrawing money from his business. His excessive spending had led to financial imbalance, with more money going out than coming in. In 2003, Chris had signed an exclusive contract with DRC, giving them the exclusive rights to produce his oil rig sealant. By 2004, his net worth had been reported to be £1 million. However, by 2005, he owed £2.8 million. Instead of cutting costs, Chris, due to his lavish spending habits, sought more money from other sources. Despite the exclusive agreement with DRC, he signed another contract with another company to sell his products. DRC discovered this infringement and sued Chris, resulting in a lawsuit and DRC acquiring Chris's patent. Chris went bankrupt, and in 2007, his company was dissolved. His assets worth £3 million were frozen and his salary was gone. Despite serious financial troubles, Chris continued to act as if nothing significant had happened. At the same time, Chris became involved in a dispute with his accountant, who reported him to the Inland Revenue for tax evasion. Chris had failed to pay VAT, national insurance, and various other taxes. To deal with his increasing tax obligations, he had to borrow from banks to ease his financial strain. In addition, he had mortgaged the Osbaston house 3 times and withdrawn money from more than 20 different bank accounts. Despite his lavish lifestyle and constant spending, Chris still tried to hide the fact that he was deeply in debt. Chris gradually found himself struggling with overwhelming challenges, aware that time was ticking away and fearful of losing everything. However, during a conversation with a friend about houses, Chris insisted that he would never sell Osbaston house. Struggling with the pressure to maintain his flashy and knowing that his time and money were running out, Chris repeatedly sought professional help. He confided in the doctor, revealing his feelings of depression and suicidal thoughts. He started taking antidepressants. In August 2008, Chris came across a letter from his house managers posted on the front gate. The letter reported that they planned to return the following Tuesday to reclaim the house and other assets. The housekeeper said that when she showed Chris the letter, Chris appeared confused but remained silent. The nightmare that Chris had been avoiding had now become a harsh reality. He was on the brink of losing all his material possessions. The thought of Kirsty and Jill losing their familiar lifestyle was unbearable for Christopher. His family faced the possibility of returning to Wolverhampton, saying goodbye to their lavish lifestyle. For a proud man like Chris, such a situation would have been extremely humiliating. On August 21, 2008, a friend contacted Chris via text message to ask about his health, and he replied, "Not good, things are about to happen to me." On August 25, 2008, the Foster's family received an invitation to a barbecue and clay pigeon shooting event. They then joined the gathering. None of the attendees noticed any signs of difficulty in the Fosters. Witnesses recalled that Chris appeared happy. Their family still exuded happiness without knowing what Chris had planned that night. Chris informed Jill that he wanted to leave the gathering. Although Jill wanted to stay a little longer, they eventually left around 8:30 p.m., arriving home just a few minutes later at 8:44 p.m., their route captured by home security footage. Soon after, Jill went to bed. At 11:30 p.m., Chris went upstairs to check on Kirsty, urging her to go to bed while continuing to text a friend online. Around midnight, Chris decided to turn off the internet, causing Kirsty to end her conversation with her friend and go to bed. At 3 a.m., Chris began his violent rampage. He entered Jill's room and used a silencer to shoot her in the head while she was sleeping. Next, he went to Kirsty's room and killed her in the same way. Home security cameras recorded Chris's actions as he carried a shotgun outside the dog cage, killing each dog with a shot to the head. He then went to the stables and killed the horses before burning the stables with the animals inside. Chris appeared expressionless in the video. To prevent firefighters from reaching the house, Chris blocked the main entrance, shooting at the tires to make movement more difficult. He also pumped 200 liters of oil from the family's tank into the house's basement through connecting pipes. It is clear that Chris took deliberate steps to completely destroy the Osbaston house. His actions appeared to have been motivated by a desire to prevent others from acquiring property that he could not keep. Chris burned down his house and covered his car and belongings in oil. The fire quickly spread and destroyed everything. Chris, still carrying a rifle, went back into the house and lay down next to Jill's body in the bedroom, holding her as flames engulfed them. At 4:11 a.m., the security cameras stopped working. A neighbor saw the growing fire and called for help. Firefighters quickly arrived. The fire was too intense and difficult to control. As firefighters tried to put out the fire, neighbors watched the building burn, worried for those inside. In the following days, the media called in to search for Foster's family, but all efforts were unsuccessful. Because of Chris's wealth, the authorities opened an investigation, initially suspecting that the Foster family had been kidnapped. However, at the time, neither the bodies nor the security footage were found, so many speculated about what might have happened to them. It took 3 days for the fire to be completely extinguished. After the fire was extinguished, investigators carefully examined the house and found the bodies of Jill and Christopher on beds in a room that had collapsed into the living room. However, there was no sign of Kirsty. While some hoped she could have escaped, others feared she had been kidnapped. Sadly, Kirsty's remains were found in the rubble a few days later. Investigators used a brush to carefully collect her remains into a hearse. A fragment of Kirsty's skull revealed that she had suffered a gunshot wound to the head, like her mother. After examining the body, the police began to suspect that Chris had committed a crime. At the same time, they began investigating his financial situation. When they dug deeper, they discovered that Chris, a seemingly successful businessman, was actually heavily in debt. His total debt had reached £4 million, and when creditors tried to take his assets, they discovered that Chris had intended to demolish the house to ensure that there was nothing left for them to take. Security footage confirmed the police's suspicions. Chris committed the murders and took his own life without leaving any explanation or warning. Speculation about the motives behind the brutal crime led to two main theories. One theory had suggested that Chris, feeling ashamed of having lost his fortune, chose to commit the heinous act to avoid admitting his failures. Another theory had proposed that Chris, being self-centered, decided to destroy everything rather than face the possibility of loss. However, Enid had disagreed with these theories. She had firmly believed that Chris acted out of love for his family, trying to protect them from financial ruin. She had defended him and felt a deep sense of sympathy for his situation. In contrast, Chris's brother Andrew had held a very different view. Despite not speaking for 16 years, Andrew had briefly considered reconciling with Chris for their mother's sake. However, his fear of a hostile encounter had kept him from reaching out. Andrew had alleged that Chris had bullied and sexually assaulted him during their childhood, leading to a tumultuous relationship. Andrew had maintained that Chris exhibited bullying and controlling behavior. Andrew's attempts to reconcile with Chris in 1999 had been met with resistance. Chris had responded to Andrew's letter with a demand for a written apology, stating that Andrew would have to beg and scrape on bended knee to make amends. Andrew had believed that Chris refused to acknowledge his past wrongdoings and instead held on to long-standing grudges. For months after the tragedy, on December 19, 2008, a joint funeral had been held for 15-year-old Kirsty and 49-year-old Jill at their local village church. The service had been quiet and respectful, attended by close friends and family. Both Kirsty and Jill had been buried in the same plot, as requested by Jill's family. Chris had received a private funeral and was buried elsewhere. In the years following the tragedy, the remains of the burnt-out house and the family's charred belongings had been left on the site. These had included Kirsty's first aid book for her horses and a handwritten note detailing the family's meal plans for the week of the tragedy. The ruins of the house had remained until 2011 when the debris had been cleared. The 16-acre estate had been sold in 2014, with plans to build a new 6-bedroom house. Although the property had been put up for sale in 2012, it had taken 2 years to sell, reportedly after the price had been reduced. The reasons behind Christopher Foster's actions may have been financial struggles and the pressure to maintain a wealthy image. However, this had not justified the horrific outcome. Instead of having made sensible financial decisions or confiding in his loved ones, Chris had chosen a destructive path that had had devastating consequences for everyone involved. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Rena Verk. Rena Verk had been born on March 10, 1983, in Saanich, British Columbia, Canada. Her family was of Indian origin, with her mother, Suman, having come from an Indian-Canadian family, and her father, Manjit, being an immigrant from India. Rena's parents had formerly been Hindus and had converted to Jehovah's religion. Rena struggled to fit in with her peers in the Saanich community, where Sikhism was popular among Indo-Canadians. Unfortunately, she was severely bullied at school due to her appearance and ethnic background, which set her apart from her predominantly white classmates. She was bullied due to her unusual appearance, being overweight and having brown skin. At home, Rena faced strict rules tied to her parents' religious beliefs, which were in stark contrast to her friends, who were starting to become independent. Her parents began to worry when they discovered her persistent bullying and feared it could negatively affect her mental health, potentially leading to depression. In May 1994, Rena's family moved to a new location, resulting in her transferring schools from Burnside Primary School. Her parents hoped this action would put an end to the bullying she initially experienced, and it seemed to be effective. Rena's mood improved, and she formed new friendships that brought her happiness. However, things took a turn for the worse when her new friends began to distance themselves from her, and the bullying began again. Rena graduated from elementary school in 1996 and began attending Colquitt's Middle School. There, she met a new group of friends whom she considered cool kids. The group was famous for breaking the rules, drinking, and smoking, which represented the freedom that Rena desired, freedom from the strictness of her parents and their rules. Although she felt accepted by her new friends, her parents disapproved of her new relationships, leading Rena to become more rebellious. In 1996, when Rena was 13 years old, a friend suggested she leave home. The friend told her she could be adopted by telling the police that her parents had physically abused her. Rena took this advice and accused her parents of assault, but no charges were brought due to lack of evidence. Rena was taken away from her family and lived with her grandparents, who believed her story. However, things got worse when Rena falsely accused her father of sexually assaulting her, causing him extreme pain and suffering. In 1997, her father was arrested and sent to prison while awaiting trial for sexually assaulting Rena. Luckily, the charges against her father were dropped when Rena admitted that she had made up the entire story. Rena felt uncomfortable living with her grandparents, so she was placed in a foster home. There, she made friends and began imitating the behavior of those around her, including talking about gangs and even falsely claiming to be a member of one. However, Rena soon realized that living in a foster home was not as fun as she thought because she still had to follow rules and curfews. Finally, she apologized to her parents and returned home. However, her time with her parents had ended very quickly. Rena had left her parents' house again and stayed in a youth shelter. Over the next few months, she had bounced between her parents' home, foster care, and the youth shelter. This volatile situation reflected the challenges she had faced as a teenager trying to cope with her relationships with her parents, social workers, and government officials. Rena had yearned for acceptance and friendship, but her strict upbringing and overprotective parents had made her feel like an outcast among her peers. She had desperately wanted to fit in and had tried her best to gain their approval. Middle school had been the most confusing and emotionally challenging time of her life. Rena had sought recognition from those who had previously rejected her. Until she had received an invitation to a party on November 14, 1997, she had been delighted at the opportunity to interact with the popular kids. Rena's life had taken a turn during an overnight gathering with celebrities, which had initially taken place behind a school in Saanich. However, due to police intervention, the group had moved to Craigflower Bridge. The gathering had not gone as Rena had planned. At 10:40 p.m., just 20 minutes before curfew, Rena had called her parents to say she was coming home. Unfortunately, this would be the last time Rena's parents would hear from her. At Craigflower Bridge, a group of teenagers had drunk alcohol and smoked marijuana. Later, another group of girls from the Shoreline 6 gang had targeted Rena without warning. They had assaulted her, burned her forehead with a lit cigarette, and tried to burn her hair. The attack had continued until a girl had intervened and ordered the others to stop. Rena had tried to escape and go home after the initial attack, but two teenagers, Kelly and Warren, had chased her. They had dragged Rena to the other side of the Craigflower Bridge, where the attack on her had continued. Kelly and Warren had punched and kicked her, then held her head underwater until she died. After Rena's death, the attackers had taken off her sweater and shoes and rolled her body into the water. Meanwhile, Rena's parents had become increasingly worried when she did not return home before curfew. They had initially thought she might be at her grandparents' house or a group home, but she had not been at either location. A friend had revealed that Rena was still at the party when the friend had left around 11 p.m. The next day, Rena's family had reported her missing, but the police had responded slowly due to her past history of running away. Rumors had spread among students at the local middle school about a brutal beating and a body found in the nearby gorge waterway. The group of teens involved, known as the Shoreline 6, had remained silent about the incident. However, a witness had eventually come forward to police, saying she had seen Kelly and Warren following Rena after the beating. It had taken a week for police to begin investigating Rena's disappearance after her family had reported her missing. Although many witnesses and teachers had heard rumors about the incident, no one had reported it to the police. It wasn't until a student had come forward as a witness that the police got involved. On November 21, 1997, Warren and Kelly had been arrested and charged with murder and aggravated assault. The members of the Shoreline Six had initially remained anonymous due to protection under Canada's Young Offenders Act, and they had faced serious assault charges. A police helicopter had been dispatched to the Craigflower Bridge area on November 22, but no evidence had been discovered until a thorough search had been conducted on the ground. This search had eventually discovered a body hidden in the weeds, later confirmed to be the missing person, Rena Verk. The forensic pathologist had concluded that Rena's death was due to drowning. However, an autopsy had shown that she had also suffered severe head injuries, which could have led to death. Rena had been only 14 years old when she had passed away. The 6 girls involved in the attack on Rena had initially been charged at the youth court in February 1998. To protect their identities, their names were not being made public. 3 of the girls had pleaded guilty to assault causing bodily harm, while the remaining 3 had been found guilty of the same offense after a trial. They had received sentences ranging from 60 days of conditional release to 1 year in prison. Rena's murder had led to the prosecution of 2 individuals, Kelly and Warren, who had been charged with her murder. Due to the severity of the crime, they had been tried in adult court despite being underage. Warren Glowatsky had had a difficult childhood. His mother had been absent for much of his life due to her struggles with alcoholism. At the time of Rena's murder, he had been living with a friend after his father had moved to California without him. Warren's trial had begun in April 1999, and he had been convicted of second-degree murder in June of the same year. As a result, he had received a life sentence. Warren had been eligible for parole after serving 7 years in prison because he had been a juvenile when the crime had occurred. During his time in prison, Warren had done things that could have had a positive impact on his decision to be paroled. This process had included measures such as meeting with Rena's family. In July 2006, Warren had been paroled from prison unescorted, and he had been finally fully released in June 2010. Rena's family had not opposed Warren's request for parole because they had believed he had shown genuine remorse for his actions. In contrast, Kelly Ard had come from a more stable family, one that had always supported her throughout the trial. She had been 15 years old when Rena had been murdered. Although her lawyer had requested that her case be heard in youth court, the Supreme Court of Canada had denied the request due to the violent nature of the crime and Kelly's apparent lack of remorse. Kelly had initially been convicted of second-degree murder in March 2000, but her conviction had been overturned in January 2003 due to an unfair trial. Pending appeal, Kelly had been released on bail after serving 18 months of her life sentence. However, during this time, she had been charged with assault causing bodily harm for attacking a 58-year-old woman in a Vancouver park. As a result, her bail had been revoked and she had been sent back to prison. In March 2004, Kelly had faced a new trial. Witnesses had testified that she had bragged about being responsible for Rena's death. Warren had claimed that he had seen Kelly drown Rena, but Kelly's lawyer had questioned Warren's credibility, pointing out inconsistencies in his initial statements to police and during the trial. Kelly Ard had testified during the trial that she had assaulted Rena to protect her friends because she had believed Rena would harm them. However, she had denied responsibility for Rena's death and instead had pointed to Warren and 2 other girls as the culprits. Despite the evidence, Kelly had shown no remorse and had offered no clear motive for the planned attack. When asked about her future, Kelly had appeared resigned, admitting that her life had been ruined and that she would likely be convicted. The jury had deliberated for 5 days before deadlocking, leading to a mistrial in July 2004. In February 2005, Kelly's second trial had taken place, with Warren again testifying as a key witness. He had repeated his earlier testimony, saying that he and Kelly had assaulted Rena, leaving her dead in the water. As a result, Kelly had been convicted of second-degree murder on April 12, 2005, and had received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole for 7 years. However, the British Columbia Court of Appeal had later overturned Kelly's conviction in September 2008. The court had ordered a retrial, citing the incorrect jury conviction in the previous trial. The decision had led to a fourth trial, allowing Kelly's case to be reconsidered in court. The Supreme Court of Canada had upheld Kelly's conviction for second-degree murder in June 2009, ending lengthy court proceedings. Years later, in 2017, Kelly was granted day parole, and in 2019, she received additional privileges, including overnight leave and extended day parole. The Parole Board of Canada's decision to continue her parole in July 2020 had attracted significant media attention. Kelly, who had initially received a life sentence, rebuilt her life on parole. She changed her name to Carrie Sim, got married, and had 2 children. She complied with the conditions of her parole, which included abstaining from the use of stimulants and avoiding contact with Rena's family. Despite the passage of time, the motives behind the teen's decision to attack and ultimately kill Rena remained unclear. One reason might have been revenge, as Rena had previously lived with the 2 girls involved in the assault. They had accused her of stealing phone books and spreading false rumors. Another girl claimed to have had a grudge against Rena for allegedly stealing her boyfriend in 2000. Rena's parents had sued the teens involved in her death, as had the British Columbia government and other parties. Rena's father explained that he wanted people to take responsibility for their actions, saying that society often failed to do so. Years later, in 2012, Rena's mother spoke out about her daughter's tragic death and the devastating effects of bullying on young people. She shared that dealing with the legal consequences of Rena's murder had left her deeply saddened. As the court cases progressed, she was finally fully feeling her loss. She was struggling more with her emotions and missed Rena even more. Rena's mother also expressed concern that bullying was becoming more severe and frequent rather than decreasing. She was shocked by the new ways young people were using technology, such as cyberbullying and texting, to harm their peers. These methods had not been available when Rena was killed, and her mother was devastated as the problem escalated. The murder of Rena Vert had led to a national debate about racism and bullying, especially among young girls. In the wake of Rena's death, Rena's parents took action to create positive change. They started anti-bullying campaigns and inclusion programs and worked with the government to implement anti-bullying measures in British Columbia schools. Rena's parents also shared their story with students, teachers, and law enforcement professionals to raise awareness about bullying. Their efforts paid off when the government introduced an anti-bullying program in schools across the province. In 2009, Rena's parents were recognized for their advocacy with the Anthony J. Hume Award of Excellence for their dedication to crime prevention and community safety. Rena Vert's life had been marked by hardships and challenges. Although she made some mistakes, it was understandable given the pressure to fit in. Despite Rena's mistakes and the false accusations against her family, her parents continued to love and support Rena unconditionally. Everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Vincent Brothers. Vincent Brothers was born on May 30, 1962, in Long Island, New York. From a young age, he was known for his charisma, reliability, and diligence. He also served in the Marine Corps Reserves. After graduating from Norfolk State University, Vincent moved to California in the mid-1980s to pursue further education and eventually earned a master's degree. Despite having a successful career as a school administrator, Vincent's personal life was marred by tumultuous relationships. His 2 previous marriages ended in divorce. In 1988, while working at California State University in Bakersfield, Vincent had a daughter with his girlfriend. He took his girlfriend to court to establish paternity and was eventually awarded custody and visitation rights. Initially required to pay $350 per month in child support, this amount was increased to $771 in 2003. That same year, Vincent was convicted of wife abuse and received a 6-day jail sentence and probation. In 1992, Vincent married for the second time, but this marriage also ended in divorce in 1996 due to accusations of intimidation and physical abuse by his second wife. While serving as the assistant principal at Emerson High School, Vincent was accused of sexually harassing a colleague. The woman claimed that Vincent assaulted her at his home and took her phone to prevent her from calling the police. When she tried to report the incident to the police, she said police discouraged her from pursuing charges because she was afraid of Vincent's reputation. The harassment continued at school, with Vincent allegedly touching her inappropriately. The woman eventually resigned from her job as a teacher, citing an unfriendly work environment. The school district investigated Vincent due to his increasingly threatening behavior and threatening phone calls. Despite Vincent denying the allegations and having no disciplinary record, the school district transferred him to another school as a precaution. Vincent then began working at John C. Fremont Elementary School in Bakersfield, California, where he also became famous and respected. Vincent was especially known for ensuring the safety of students by taking them home after school. While teaching at Fremont Elementary School, Vincent met Johnia Berry, the school's security supervisor and basketball manager. Vincent and Johnia began dating and eventually married after the birth of their first child, Marcus. Their family grew with the arrival of their second child, Lindsay, in 2000. However, Vincent's infidelity caused him and Johnia to divorce in September 2001. 2 years later, Vincent and Johnia remarried in secret, and their third child, Marshall, was born 4 months later. Johnia eventually opened up to her friends about the problems in her marriage. Unlike before, she expressed her fear that Vincent might harm her. However, to those around them, Vincent's family appeared happy and actively involved in the community, often attending local events and maintaining good relationships with others. From the outside, Johnia and Vincent's marriage seemed stable. Johnia continued to work as a basketball manager, pursuing her passion. However, no one expected that the tragic events hidden behind the family's happy exterior would soon emerge. 3 months before the tragic event, Vincent had moved out of the house due to frequent arguments with his mother-in-law, Ernestine. On July 6, 2003, Johnia attended a church service with her 3 children, Marcus, Lindsay, and 6-week-old Marshall, as well as her mother, Ernestine. The family had lunch at Black Angus after the ceremony, then returned home for a nap. As was their custom, Johnia and the children stayed in one bedroom, while Ernestine stayed in another room in the house. Tragically, the family was attacked in their home. The killer easily entered the house without signs of forced entry and shot Johnia twice in the head while she was in the bedroom. Lindsay was also shot in the back. The noise alerted Ernestine, causing her to quickly arm herself with a .38 revolver and move toward the hallway to investigate. Unfortunately, she was killed before she could defend herself. The attacker shot Ernestine twice in the face, causing her to collapse in the hallway outside her bedroom. The attacker then entered the room and shot Marcus, followed by a fatal shot to the baby's back. Each shot was aimed very carefully. Instead of fleeing the scene immediately, the attacker went to the kitchen to get a knife and then returned to the bedroom. There, the attacker stabbed the victims multiple times in the back. On July 8, 2003, Kelsey Spann, Johnia's best friend, became worried when she had not heard from Johnia Ernestine, and Joni's children since they went to church the previous Sunday. Kelsey decided to go to Joni's house to check on them using the key Joni had given her. When she tried to unlock the door, she found it difficult to open due to an obstacle. She then went to the back of the house and found an unlocked sliding glass door, which was unusual. Upon entering the house, Kelsey discovered Joni, her mother Ernestine, and Marcus, Lindsay, and Marshall, all dead. Kelsey immediately contacted authorities at 7 a.m. They arrived at the scene and discovered 5 family members brutally murdered. The family's peaceful home, located in a quiet neighborhood, became the scene of a horrific crime. The police investigation concluded that the family had been tragically killed on Sunday afternoon as they returned from church. Before leaving the scene, the perpetrator covered the bodies in the bedroom with blankets and pillows taken from other rooms. Detectives identified Joni as the primary target due to the severity of her injuries, suggesting the attacker had been extremely angry. Police were concerned about Vincent's safety and discovered he had been in Ohio. Detective Watts traveled to North Carolina, where Vincent was visiting his mother with his brother Melvin. When North Carolina police met with Vincent, they found him severely traumatized and unable to speak coherently, which did not provide many details about the investigation. Vincent's behavior was inconsistent with that of a murderer, and because he had been on the other side of the country when the murder occurred, police initially ruled him out as a suspect. He also provided receipts showing purchases made around the time of the tragedy, confirming that he had not been in Bakersfield, California, where the incident occurred. However, Detective Watts still doubted Vincent's innocence. Notably, Vincent never asked how his wife and children had died, which aroused suspicion. On July 11, 2003, Vincent had returned to Los Angeles without attending their family's memorial service, but Vincent had attended their funeral 5 days later. As the investigation continued, it was discovered that Vincent had moved out of his family home in April 2003. Additionally, his wife, Joni, had been planning to divorce him again and had sought child support. Authorities also discovered that Vincent had had a history of violence against women, which had led them to take a closer look at his alibi. Upon further investigation, surveillance video from the store's checkout counters had shown that Melvin, not Vincent, had made the purchase at that time. When confronted, Melvin revealed that Vincent had told him to make these purchases in Vincent's name. Despite their efforts, police were unable to find any witnesses who had seen Vincent between the evening of July 4th and the evening of July 7th. Both Melvin and his family insisted they had not seen Vincent during this time. Although there was no direct evidence linking Vincent to the murder, police discovered he had some suspicious activities. Vincent had rented a car when he had arrived in Columbus, Ohio, and he had stayed at his brother's house. Police suspected Vincent had flown to Columbus on July 2, 2003 to visit family, then returned to Bakersfield on July 4th, where the tragic incident had occurred on July 6th. He was supposed to return to Ohio on July 7th and had arrived late that evening. Law enforcement had conducted a thorough inspection of the Dodge vehicle, paying special attention to its radiator and air filter. To help identify insects found in the car, investigators had enlisted the expertise of Dr. Lynn Kimsey from the Bohart Museum of Entomology at the University of California, Davis. Dr. Kimsey carefully had analyzed the insects and identified more than 100 species, including several species found only in the western region beyond the Rocky Mountains. The presence of some insects suggested that Vincent had moved at night. By carefully analyzing the insects, Dr. Kimsey had been able to plot a path that showed the car had traveled west from Ohio. Investigators later had tracked down the 5 previous car renters and confirmed that none of them had driven the car to California or near the Rocky Mountains. Police also had examined photographic evidence and found the end of a rubber glove in the laundry room. DNA testing showed a match. It belonged to none other than Vincent Brothers. Detective Watts had discovered that Vincent had been planning to leave town and had begun selling his assets. including putting his house on the market. As a result, Vincent had been arrested on April 30, 2004 and charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. The trial began in 2007, with prosecutor Lisa Green leading the case. The prosecution argued that Vincent's motive for the murder had been financial, suggesting he had acted out of fear of having to pay child support due to his impending divorce from Johnie. The prosecution portrayed Vincent as a serial adulterer who often had disappeared for long periods of time and who could become violent. To support their case, the prosecution called several witnesses, including Dr. Lynn Kimsey, who testified that the insects found in the Dodge were consistent with insects commonly found along Interstate 70. This testimony was further supported by evidence showing 5,424 miles had been driven from July 2 to July 11 in accordance with the prosecution's statement. However, when Melvin had appeared in court, he tried to change his previous testimony, claiming that he had lied to the police about Vincent giving him a credit card to use. In response, the defense presented an expert on high-speed driving, who argued that maintaining an average speed of 70 miles per hour during the trip from Ohio to California had been extremely difficult. The defense also presented its pathologists, who testified that the murders could have occurred as late as Monday morning, July 7, 2003. The defense also had presented interrogation tapes to prove that Melvin had been pressured by police to change his statement. Additionally, they called a witness who claimed to have seen a car accident involving Vincent on Sunday morning, in which a boy on a bicycle had collided with Vincent's rental car at an intersection. Although the incident had not been reported to the police due to the lack of damage or injuries, the prosecution attempted to verify the story. Vincent had taken it upon himself to defend himself. He had strongly denied all accusations about his married life and had firmly denied the accusation of murdering his family. Throughout his testimony, Vincent had become emotional and had shed tears several times. The prosecution had called Carla Tuya, principal of Franklin School, as a witness. She had testified about her past relationship with Vincent, which had begun in 1996 when his son was born and had ended in 2002 when she had decided to end it. Carla revealed a shocking secret that she and Vincent had been intimate just weeks before the family tragedy, directly contradicting Vincent's previous denials about everything. This admission had damaged Vincent's claim to fidelity to his family. The prosecution had argued that the crime had been carefully planned in advance. Thanks to knowing the family's Sunday habits, the murderer had gained an advantage and had had the opportunity to strike. The perpetrator had taken advantage of this and had waited until the whole family was asleep, then had used the spare key to enter the house through the sliding glass door and had killed each family member. On May 15, 2017, Vincent had been found guilty of 5 counts of first-degree murder, making him eligible for the death penalty. The jury had reached this decision after hearing testimony from 137 witnesses and deliberating for nearly 2 days. After the verdict, Vincent had been removed from the courtroom and had been returned to the Luro detention facility under tight security. Then, on September 27, 2007, Durr County Superior Court Judge Michael Bush had sentenced Vincent Brothers to death by lethal injection. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Carrie Leah Farver. Carrie Leah Farver was born on November 30, 1974 in Macedonia, Nebraska, USA. After going through many relationships, she raised her son Maxwell alone. Carrie Leah loved her son very much. Carrie Leah spent a month in bed due to severe depression. Her mother, Nancy Rainey, helped take care of her son Maxwell. The complicated relationship with Maxwell's father along with the difficult living conditions caused Carrie Leah, a young woman of 20 years old, to fall into an unstable psychological state. Doctors diagnosed Carrie Leah with bipolar disorder. People with bipolar disorder often have 2 opposite psychological states. One moment they can feel overly excited, energetic and friendly, but then they can fall into a state of depression, frustration and helplessness. this disease causes them a lot of difficulties in daily life. However, in the early 2000s, Carrie Lee's doctor found an effective treatment that allowed Carrie Leah to live a normal life. In the fall of 2012, Carrie Leah received a lucrative job offer in nearby Omaha, an opportunity she couldn't refuse. Carrie Leah accepted the offer. However, her son, Maxwell, was in middle school and didn't want to change his familiar surroundings, so Maxwell decided to stay with his grandmother in Macedonia. One day in November 2012, Carrie Leah met Dave Kropa at the auto repair shop where he worked. When Dave looked at Carrie Lee's Ford Explorer, he realized that he really liked this woman. Carrie Leah was showing Dave something inside the car, and they stood close to each other, and there was a little tension. Not long after, Dave and Carrie Leah went on a date. Carrie Leah went to Dave's house. A while later, a woman named Liz called Dave a lot and texted him. Then Liz went to Dave's house to pick up something he had left for her. Dave explained to Carrie Leah that Liz Gollier was the first person Dave met online in 2012. Liz, born in 1975 in Michigan, initially told Dave that she was not looking for a serious relationship because she was a mother and needed to spend most of her time with her children. In Dave and Liz's relationship, they had few topics to talk about, and their relationship was mainly physical. After a while, Liz began to worry about what Dave was doing when she was not around, as well as who he was seeing. Dave often reminded her that they were in an open relationship and that she should not worry. He also insisted that Liz was free to date other men. However, Liz was not happy with this and began to bother Dave more and more. Liz also felt jealous of Dave's children and their mother, Amy, because she could not understand the close relationship they had after the breakup. Eventually, Liz's actions upset Dave, and he decided to break up with her. Carrie Leah sympathized with Dave, as everyone had relationships in the past, and Carrie Leah did not let that affect their relationship, but Liz was clearly upset to see a strange woman in Dave's house. Liz, feeling that Dave was increasingly distancing himself from her, wrote text messages, emails, and called Dave. However, Dave would not stop seeing Carrie Leah or anyone else because of Liz. 2 weeks after moving to her new job, Carrie Leah began dating Dave. Carrie Leah and Dave began spending more time together. Dave felt comfortable with Carrie Leah around. Carrie Leah said that she was not looking for a serious relationship, but just wanted to enjoy the good times together. In December 2015, Liz was shot. Liz probably guessed who it was. Luckily, the wound was not fatal. Liz thought, "This can't go on any longer, I have to do something." At 9:45 a.m. at work, Dave suddenly received a text message from Carrie Leah. In the message, Carrie Leah expressed her desire to live with Dave forever. The content of the message made Dave feel confused and surprised, because he did not understand the reason for Carrie Lee's sudden change. Because before, they had discussed and agreed that both of them would not rush into a binding relationship. Dave gently replied to Carrie Leah that he was not ready for this big change. Carrie Lee's response was very unpleasant. When Dave returned to the apartment, he found that all of Carrie Lee's belongings that she had brought were gone. This made him think that Carrie Leah had left him. On the same day, Carrie Leah deleted him from her Facebook friend list. Although it seemed like everything was over, it was not. Dave began receiving a series of text messages and emails from Carrie Leah, which were full of curses and threats to ruin Dave's life. The messages were numerous and all of them were rude. In addition, Carrie Leah did not show up for work. The strange messages from Carrie Leah were not only sent to Dave, but also to her mother and 15-year-old son. In May 2013, Carrie Leah posted a lengthy post on her personal Facebook page, in which she wrote, she had answered enough questions to prove to everyone that she had had enough. You can either believe that she was a girl, or leave her alone. She quit her volunteer job and she was fed up with people giving her a hard time. She just didn't want to go home right now. She was a grown woman, and if she wanted to leave home, she had every right to do so. Sorry for hurting everyone. Carrie Leah then remained absent for a while. Her mother realized something was wrong when Carrie Leah missed her own birthday, Max's birthday, and other family celebrations. Finally, when her father passed away. After a while, Liz Gollier began receiving messages from Carrie Leah. In those messages, Carrie Leah criticized and insulted Liz, even threatened Liz to stay away from Dave. To understand Carrie Leah's strange behavior, Liz contacted Dave. He said he was also in a similar situation. Carrie Leah sent him many messages and emails, in which Carrie Leah accused Dave of all kinds of wrongdoing, called him a liar, and promised to avenge the pain he had caused Carrie Leah. Gradually, the messages from Carrie Leah became more threatening, with confusing content and grammatical errors. Carrie Leah's mother insists that her daughter is not a hot-tempered person and has always been very careful in writing letters and documents. Carrie Leah pays attention to spelling and presentation. Is her bipolar disorder relapsing and developing into something more serious? After Carrie Leah's confusing actions, all the evidence points to Carrie Leah having psychological difficulties. Liz and Dave often receive hundreds of text messages and emails, even when they are together. Their phones constantly buzz with messages, which makes them both uncomfortable. Although they continue to date, Dave feels uncomfortable around Liz. She becomes more and more demanding, despite always insisting that Liz is fine with their no-strings-attached relationship. In January 2013, Dave found Carrie Leah's car in his front yard. Dave called the police and reported the incident. The police came to check the car and found no suspicious signs. The police then turned the car over to Carrie Leah's parents. Carrie Leah continued to text Dave and Liz. Carrie Leah even started sending pictures of Dave's children and threatening to harm them. As time went on, Carrie Leah continued to stalk them. Liz became increasingly jealous, made Dave angry and tired of the situation, and finally decided to end the relationship with Liz. In August 2013, Liz reported a fire at her house, which killed all of her pets, including a snake, a cat, and 2 dogs. Liz told the police that Carrie Leah had repeatedly threatened her through text messages and emails. So she suspected Carrie Leah of starting the fire. The police seized Dave and Liz's cell phones. Someone damaged Dave's auto repair shop and threw a brick through the window. Dave felt threatened, so he bought a gun to protect himself. After a while, Amy Flora, Dave's ex-wife, also began receiving threatening messages from Carrie Leah, because Dave often spent time with the children and met Amy. The police became suspicious for reasons that were hard to understand. Dave had only dated Carrie Leah for less than 2 weeks, but had been following him and his ex-girlfriends for 3 years. Meanwhile, Carrie Leah's family had not seen her for 3 years, and were trying to find her, using every method possible. In 2015, these efforts paid off. Police officers Ryan Avis and Jim Doty volunteered to investigate Carrie Leah Farver's disappearance. However, they found no evidence that Carrie Leah was alive. It was unusual for an adult to pack up and leave without spending any money. No one had seen her, and no one had heard her voice. This was very strange. With the assistance of Anthony Kawa, Digital Forensics Administrator at the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office, police analyzed the contents of Dave and Liz's phones. In 2013, Anthony reported that Carrie Leah Farver had sent more than 50,000 text messages and 15,000 emails to Dave over the course of 3 years. Anthony also said that those impersonating Carrie Leah were becoming more sophisticated in their operations, trying to hide their IP addresses and real identities. It seems that someone knew what they were doing and had access to various computer programs. In December 2015, Liz Gollier contacted the police to report that she had been shot in the leg outside her home. She determined that the attacker was not Carrie Leah but Dave's ex-wife Amy Flora. Furthermore, Dave had a missing gun that Amy may have taken. It is possible that Amy was behind Carrie Lee's disappearance. A clue in the investigation indicates that people associated with Dave were being harassed. It is possible that Amy, having had a difficult life after breaking up with Dave, the father of her children, decided to take revenge and eliminate all rivals, and the relationship between Dave and Amy was still quite good. The children together brought them closer, and Carrie Leah clearly hindered their reunion. The police quickly questioned Amy, but surprisingly, Amy had an alibi. She was not at Liz's house when the shooting occurred, and this was confirmed by several people. Because there was no hard evidence, Amy was not arrested. Experts processed the data from Liz's cell phone and discovered important information. Anthony discovered fake email addresses with different variations of the name Carrie Leah. In addition, Anthony found an application that Carrie Leah used to schedule messages to be sent at certain times. This could explain why Liz and Dave received messages from Carrie Leah at the same time. Anthony began to suspect Liz Gollier. The answer became clear when Liz's fingerprints were compared to those found on the steering wheel of Carrie Lee's car, and they matched perfectly. The culprit was revealed. The killer has been here for years without anyone knowing. The case needs to be solved as soon as possible. The police want to catch Liz red-handed, so they plan to frame Liz. The police decide to make up a story about believing Liz, with Amy still being the main suspect. Liz takes the bait. Liz is extremely happy because she can finally get rid of another rival who is hindering Liz's happiness with Dave. Soon after, Liz gives the police an email that she says is from Amy. In the email, Amy admits to kidnapping Carrie Leah and includes many details about the incident. The confession in the email states that Carrie Leah was stabbed in the stomach or chest before being dumped. In addition, the email contains information about Carrie Lee's car and home address that no one else knows. The police say that Liz has provided information that only the real culprit would know. The email messages clearly indicated that the crime had taken place in a car, so the police decided to re-examine Carrie Lee's car. After the police removed the upholstery and fabric, they discovered blood stains belonging to Carrie Leah, who had gone missing. Liz had created fake messages on Carrie Lee's behalf without raising suspicion. According to the investigation, Liz Gollier dated both Dave and a man named Garrett. Garrett lived at the IP address identified as the source of the messages under Carrie Lee's name. When talking to Garrett, the police discovered that he had been in a long-term relationship with Johnia Berry, known to many as Liz. Garrett had invited Liz to live with his children after a fire. However, their relationship became complicated and strained when they lived together, with Garrett having to care for Liz's children while she was away. Garrett was surprised to hear from police that Liz had spent 40 to 50 hours a week impersonating the missing woman Carrie Leah. Liz's room was a mess, but no significant evidence was found. However, police did find several cell phones and electronic devices in the last room she stayed in. In late December 2016, Johnia Berry, known as Liz, was charged with first-degree murder. Liz's attorney, James Martin Davis, hopes the case will fail because Carrie Lee's body has not been found, the murder weapon has not been found, and Liz has not pleaded guilty. There is no evidence to prove that Carrie Leah is dead. The defense team decides to hold a new trial, with Liz's guilt decided by a judge. Electronic evidence was presented along with physical evidence. The prosecution asserted that the amount of blood found on the passenger seat of Carrie Lee's car was consistent with Liz's confession. Police analyzed the memory card that Liz had been using when Carrie Leah went missing. The memory card was on Dave's tablet. Police recovered deleted images, including a photo of a human foot with a Chinese symbol tattoo. The foot belonged to a man who had died many years earlier. There was also a tattoo that Carrie Lee's mother identified as Carrie Leah. The photo was used to confirm Liz's guilt. The judge found Shauna Gollier, also known as Liz, guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced her to life in prison without parole. Additionally, Liz was convicted of arson in August 2013, a fire that not only destroyed her home but also killed her pet. Liz was sentenced to an additional 20 years in prison. She is currently incarcerated at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women and maintains her innocence. Carrie Lee's son Maxwell has followed in his mother's footsteps by becoming a computer programmer. Maxwell graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in software engineering and data science and is married.